Chapter 1496. A Peerless Dog. It's really a peerless dog. Black Armor was startled when he sensed the terrifying aura of a ferocious beast that surged towards him. His body shrank and he felt a great terror surging within him. Although it was just a high-grade god black dog, it inexplicably made his heart palpitate. Of course, perhaps it was because of the scene at the moment that he could not help but feel a chill. The broken bodies of god kings lingering in the void, and the terrible dog bathed in God's blood at this moment, the black earth prison flame and the blood-stained heaven god's bone made the black dog look like a reaper who had walked out of hell. The experts of the immortal spirit divine dynasty were stunned. They never thought that the simultaneous action of so many experts of the Titan divine dynasty would result in such a miserable end, with so many low-grade god kings dying miserably on the spot. It was worth noting that the importance of god kings to a divine dynasty was self-evident. The guards behind Black Armor sucked in their breath. King Pingyang, King Tianlong, and the other experts also felt a chill. It was too terrible. The black dog bathed in God's blood had completely changed their opinion of him. They could not believe that this black dog really dared to kill so wantonly. However, they had to say that it was a good kill. When the emissaries of the Titan divine dynasty came to the Xiai divine dynasty, they were quite humble at first, but a few days later, they became more and more arrogant. Perhaps they dared to be so presumptuous because they knew that the divine emperor's time was coming to an end. King Pingyang and the others did not dare to cause trouble for the divine dynasty, which caused the Titan divine dynasty to start a war. Therefore, they had to swallow their anger. But this time they were really satisfied. Bufang was also very satisfied. The divine flame was devouring wantonly. Countless laws were fused into it, making it shine even more silver. It was as if silver was melting and burning. The scorching heat distorted the void. Of course, at the moment, everyone's eyes were not on the flame. Instead, they were fixed on the black dog holding the heaven god's bone. In the sky, a terrible aura was rolling over. It was the aura of a high-grade god king, a true high-grade god king. He was much stronger than Black and White. He was the top expert of the Titan divine dynasty. He was in charge of protecting the geniuses and monstrous geniuses on this trip. However, this powerhouse was burning with anger at this moment. He roared and his body flew across the sky as if he was going to tear the sky apart. Even the sky was distorted. This was a truly terrifying existence. The air in the entire capital seemed to boil at this moment. It's Heavenly King Tai Hang. We're saved. Damn that black dog. Terrifying. The black dog, who has comprehended the law of time, and the heavenly god's bone, is practically invincible. The god kings of the Titan divine dynasty, who were covered in blood, breathed sighs of relief, their eyes filled with the joy of surviving a disaster. They didn't die. They survived. If Heaven King Tai Hang showed up, he would definitely be able to save them. Heavenly King Tai Hang was a high-grade god king who had comprehended 1,000 laws of nature. His strength was so strong that it could penetrate the heavens and the earth. As for the Xiai divine dynasty's accusation, the mid-grade god kings of the Titan divine dynasty, however, did not care. If they obtained the heavenly god's bone, they would naturally have to fear the divine emperor. Even though the divine emperor was in his twilight years, he was still the divine emperor. However, since they did not obtain the heavenly god's bone, the significance was completely different. If the divine emperor punished them for not obtaining the heavenly god's bone, Elder Tai Hang would definitely be able to protect them. Moreover, if the divine emperor insisted on killing them, it would certainly cause a conflict between the Titan divine dynasty and the Xiai divine dynasty. This was something that the current divine emperor could not bear. Therefore, they understood that when Elder Tai Hang appeared, they would survive. Unfortunately, they would not have the chance to obtain the heavenly god's bone. The law of time combined with the heavenly god's bone was indeed terrifying. Even a dog could stir up a storm. The terrible voice was interrogative, causing the void to tremble and crack. Lord Go's 3 heads looked up at the same time, his blood-red eyes gleaming as he stared at the void. There, a bare-chested powerhouse with runes all over his body stepped through the air toward them. His body was magnificent, and his hair was like needles. His eyes flickered, and his aura fluctuated. A high-grade god king? A grave look came into Lord Go's eyes. But it was just a grave look. Although it was still a little difficult for Lord Go to fight a high-grade god king now, he could still protect himself. Moreover, Lord Go did not believe that he would dare to make a move in the Divine Dynasty's capital under the nose of the old Divine Emperor. Although the old Divine Emperor was old, he was not dead yet. Rumble. His steps were like the evening drum and morning bell. Every step he took made everyone's energy and blood boil. His frightening aura was like a tidal wave, constantly slamming against the shore, causing the reefs to crumble and crack. A high-grade god king was extremely terrifying. Some demigods who were hiding in a corner and watching secretly could not bear the pull of this aura. They grunted and coughed up blood. The heirs of aristocratic families and the young masters all looked horrified. All the high-grade god kings of the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty had entered the ancient heaven god's relic, so they usually did not have the chance to see a high-grade god king. But when they saw one this time, they were surprised. A god emperor was naturally stronger than a high-grade god king, but his strength had reached the level of returning to its original state. Without unleashing his aura, he was no different from an ordinary old man. This high-grade god king of the Titan Divine Dynasty, on the other hand, was so domineering that he forced everyone present. Dong, dong, dong. The void seemed to freeze. God King Tai Heng's eyes shone like torches. A wheel of law emerged over his head. Countless laws were swirling in it, a total of 1,000 of them. This was what a high-grade god king relied on. His gaze swept across the crowd, and some demigods could not bear the pressure and felt as if their bodies were cracking. Heaven King Tai Heng was a top expert in the Titan Divine Dynasty. The Titan Divine Dynasty had 4 heavenly kings, and he was one of them. The Titan Divine Emperor attached great importance to this exchange, so he sent Tai Heng. But now, a god king of the Titan Divine Dynasty was slaughtered by a dog. Of course, Heaven King Tai Heng also knew that the Titan Divine Dynasty's god king was in the wrong. But what was there to be afraid of? As long as he was here, he was in the right. If they failed to get the heaven god's bone, was the Divine Emperor going to kill them all? He was a heaven king of the Titan Divine Dynasty, and if the Divine Emperor killed him, it would be a declaration of war against the Titan Divine Dynasty. Would the Xiaoyi Divine Emperor, who was past his prime, dare to do that? Rumble. A terrible aura towered into the sky as if to set off blasts. Heaven King Tai Heng walked fearlessly, heading straight for the Lord Go. Damn dog! You dare to kill a god king of the Titan Divine Dynasty? You'll die with him. Tai Heng exhaled, stirring up a gust of wind. The void trembled. The surrounding void cracked and the turbulence lashed at him, but he was unscathed. His fleshly body was too strong. As a heaven king, not only was his power of law strong, but his fleshly body was even more terrifying. Those who could become heaven kings were also top existences among high-grade god kings. The Lord Go's 3 dog heads grinned at the same time and sneered disdainfully. In midair, the mid-grade god king of the Titan Divine Dynasty fled frantically into the distance. If they want to snatch my heaven god bone from the Lord Go, they should be prepared to die. They have only themselves to blame for this. The Lord Go said in a gentle voice. They have only themselves to blame? You have only yourself to blame for this. Then you have only yourself to blame for me killing you. Heaven King Tai Heng's gaze seemed to tear the sky apart. He roared, his hair seeming to tear the sky apart. He threw out a palm. As he did so, his palm soared against the wind, growing bigger and bigger in midair. In just a flash, it was bigger than any skyscraper, blotting out the sky as it slapped down toward the Lord Go. The earth prison fire burned around the Lord Go, and his eyes burst into a dazzling light. A dog's bark shook the heavens. The law of time erupted in an instant. Rumble. The surrounding void seemed to be stagnant. This was a heaven-defying means. However, the law of time. Break it. Heaven King Tai Hang's blood and energy surged as he opened his mouth and roared. He could not believe that he had used his fleshly body to break the shackles of the law of time. This was the power of a Heaven King of the Titan Divine Dynasty. The palm continued to fall from the sky. The expressions of Black Armor and the others had already changed. The attack of a Heaven King was already beyond his control. In fact, the high-grade God Kings who led the emissary groups of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty and the Titan Divine Dynasty were not ordinary God Kings. Each of their attacks was enough to cause a stir in the Divine Dynasty. Of course, Black Armor didn't think that these two God Kings would easily attack in the capital. Rumble. Barbaric glyphs surged over the terrible palm. Although Heaven King Tai Hang had broken the law of time of the Lord Go, the others couldn't. However, the others were unable to break it. The few mid-grade God Kings who were fleeing felt that they had stepped into a swamp and couldn't move at all. This terrified them. A three-headed black dog appeared in front of them, strutting its enchanting cat-like step. The blood-stained bones smashed down. A boom rang out. A mid-grade God King finally couldn't bear the burden. His body cracked and shattered. In the restaurant, Bu Fang's eyes lit up. His divine sense surged as he controlled the divine flame and moved it toward the mid-grade God King's body. Soon, it devoured the dissipating power of the law. Bu Fang felt refreshed. A man and a dog, both of you are courting death. Tai Hang's voice turned cold. He fixed his eyes on Bu Fang and the Lord Go, revealing his killing intent. A dog had killed a Titan God King. And that man had devoured the law of God Kings. This was a blasphemy against the Titan Divine Clan. The sky-blotting palm slapped toward the restaurant, intending to destroy everything. The black dog couldn't run away. In midair, the experts of the Xiai Divine Dynasty and the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty felt their hearts palpitate. Black Armor was even more anxious. Why hasn't His Majesty made a move yet? If he doesn't, the whole capital will be turned upside down. Bu Fang expressionlessly looked at the huge hand that covered the sky. The might of the hand made Bu Fang's heart palpitate. He was indeed unable to block it. After all, he was only a demigod. Killing low-grade God Kings and fighting mid-grade God Kings was already his limit. And that was under the condition that these God Kings had not comprehended the supreme law. Bu Fang had no chance of beating a high-grade God King. Perhaps crushing the God of Cooking's divine power liquid drop would allow him to withstand the blow. Bu Fang didn't know what the limit of the God of Cooking's divine power liquid drop was. The Lord Go's three heads turned. His gaze seemed to sharpen. Why isn't the Divine Emperor making a move? This old man is playing tricks with me. It makes me happy to be mischievous. Unfortunately, this old man has forgotten that I, the Lord Go, have an awesome chef behind me. His figure flickered. The Lord Go stood in front of the restaurant in an instant. Bu Fang boy. Fortune flatbread. The Lord Go's gentle and magnetic voice rang out. Standing at the top of the building, Bu Fang, his vermilion robe flapping noisily, narrowed his eyes. A fortune flatbread? Bu Fang understood what the Lord Go meant. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Bu Fang's heart skipped a beat. He raised his hand. The silver divine flame returned, floating and burning in his palm. 3 fortune flatbreads emerged and were wrapped in the silver divine flame. The fortune flatbread was surrounded by fortune chi. The next moment Bu Fang flicked his fingers. The 3 flatbreads turned into streams of light and shot toward the Lord Go, who was burning with earth prison flame. As the man who stood behind the Lord Go, Bu Fang consciously added something to the flatbreads. The fortune flatbread baked with the divine flame. Lord Go explode. A ripping sound rang out. The 3 flatbreads turned into streams of silver light and shot out. The Lord Go's eyes flashed with blood-red light as he opened his mouth. The 3 dog heads opened their mouths at the same time and swallowed the flatbreads. Gulp, the flatbreads entered their mouths. They looked at the cold Tai hang in the sky. They looked at the terrifying palm that was slapping toward them. They looked at the faintly discernible gaze in the void. The Lord Go twitched his mouth. Then, he let out a burp. These people have no idea how powerful Bufang Boy is. Chapter 1497. The Fortune Flatbread. It was all about fortune. To put it bluntly, it all depended on luck. Although Bufang did not change the flatbread fundamentally by baking it with the divine flame, the power of the 1,000 laws contained in the divine flame washed it, giving it extraordinary energy. Each of Lord Go's 3 dog heads bit off a piece of fortune flatbread. Without chewing, they swallowed it directly. A steady stream of fortune gas immediately gushed out and poured into Lord Go's body. The earth prison fire around Lord Go grew more and more intense, so much so that it seemed to blot out the sky. It was extremely terrifying. In the sky, Titan Heaven King sneered. He didn't care about the black dog's behavior at all. Eating flatbread? What's the use of eating a flatbread? Can a flatbread defy the heavens? Besides, it's just a flatbread cooked by a demigod chef. As the Heaven King of the Titan Divine Dynasty, the only thing he believed in was strength. In this chaotic universe, strength was everything. If it weren't for the Divine Emperor's formidable strength, Tai Hang would have dared to knock him off his pedestal. However, the reason why the Divine Emperor was called the Divine Emperor was because of his formidable strength. Tai Hang couldn't refute that. Rumble! The palm came crashing down as if to shatter everything. Lord Go let out a deafening roar as if to destroy heaven and earth. After devouring the fortune flatbread, fortune gas circulated, making Lord Go's aura much stronger. However, that was not the point. Rumble! Tai Hang's palm contained mysterious barbaric glyphs, which had the power to suppress the heaven god's bone. Therefore, if the black dog planned to use the heaven god's bone to break his move, it would definitely be smashed into minced meat by his palm. Moreover, even this skyscraper would be wiped out by his palm. He was a heaven king, and who dared to easily resist the might of a heaven king? Anyone who resisted him would have to pay a price. Rumble! Lord Go's 3 dog heads barked. Sound waves blasted out. Bam! An invisible force collided with the palm that blotted out the sky. A terrible rumble kept sweeping out. In the sky, Heaven King Tai Hang's pupils constricted. He could sense an unparalleled aura from the black dog's position. It was the aura of the laws. Bang! With a loud bang, the restriction on the palm disappeared. The next thing that appeared was a black dog that seemed to have become even more bizarre. Each of the black dog's 3 heads had a restless energy floating in its mouth. The first head was engulfed by the gray power of the law of space. The second head was the law that Lord Go possessed, the law of time. Contained within the third head was the law of destruction, the law of destruction. 3 heads, 3 laws of nature, 3 supreme laws of the universe. At this moment, it wasn't just Heavenly King Tai Hang who gasped. Everyone present gasped as well. Even the mysterious figure hiding in the void couldn't help but cry out. 3 supreme laws of the universe? How was this possible? How did this black dog undergo such a huge transformation? People like Bufang and the Crown Prince, who had comprehended 2 supreme laws of the universe, were already considered geniuses among geniuses. But now, this black dog had comprehended 3 supreme laws of the universe. No, it wasn't comprehension. Heaven King Tai Hang narrowed his eyes, and there seemed to be a bright light flashing in his eyes. There was something strange about this. Even the strongest geniuses of the chaotic universe couldn't comprehend 2 more supreme laws of the universe in an instant. Was it because of the flatbread just now? Heaven King Tai Hang was no fool. After thinking about it carefully, he found something strange. It was most likely because of the flatbread. The people around him were no fools either. They all gasped. Their eyes were bursting with light and disbelief. 3 supreme laws of the universe, just by eating a flatbread. He comprehended 2 supreme laws of the universe? Others couldn't even comprehend 1 law if they wanted to, but this black dog was so terrifying. Was a man inferior to a dog? Rumble. Lord Go felt the swelling power, which made the Lord Go's mouth curl up involuntarily. The next moment, he looked up, and his eyes burst into a dazzling light. 3 supreme laws of the universe. This is what makes Bufang Boy so powerful. He carried the heavenly god's bone. His figure suddenly shot up and turned into a pitch-black figure, shooting across the void. He tore through the sky, causing the void to tremble. He raised the heaven god's bone and threw it at Heaven King Tai Hang. Everyone held their breath. It's resisting. The black dog is resisting. Heaven King Tai Hang's body suddenly tensed up, and a mighty power erupted from him. How arrogant! I don't know where the 3 supreme laws of the universe came from, but you have no idea what the might of a heaven god means. Heaven King Tai Hang roared. The next moment, his body burst into a dazzling light. Buzz, a disk of law emerged over Heaven King Tai Hang's head. The runes of law danced and shone brightly. Heaven King Tai Hang has also comprehended 1 supreme law of the universe. Even if this black dog unleashes 3 supreme laws of the universe, he may not be able to win. The gap between them is not that easy to bridge. The Titan gods said excitedly. Roar. The law of destruction erupted. Heaven King Tai Hang's body suddenly swelled. Like the palm he had thrown out, he began to expand. It slowly swelled up. Rumble. Terrifying barbaric glyphs pulsed. The next moment, the whole capital seemed to have become small. Heaven King Tai Hang had grown to a height of 10,000 feet, standing tall. The whole capital was alarmed. The people looked at the huge figure in horror. A terrible aura pervaded the air, making them kneel involuntarily. Some of the experts were also shivering under this pressure. He was too strong. This was the might of a heaven god. Rumble. Heaven King Tai Hang, who had transformed into a towering titan, had torch-like eyes. Then, he pointed a finger at Lord Go, who was galloping away. That finger, it caused the void to shatter continuously, and terrifying explosions could be heard. Bam! As Lord Go held the heaven god's bone, the blood-colored patterns on it seemed to come to life and kept pulsing. An explosion occurred. The power of countless laws pervaded the air. 3 supreme laws of the universe were too powerful. However, Heaven King Tai Hang's laws were stronger. 1 supreme law of the universe and 1,000 ordinary laws were enough to bridge the gap between the 2 supreme laws. Blood-colored light and earthy yellow light swirled in the sky. Rumble. The sky was torn apart. It was as if the chaotic universe had descended. High in the sky, a wheel of law emerged. The wheel of law seemed to tear everything apart. It caused the void to tremble. This was a punishment from the laws of the chaotic universe. The collision of the 2 laws had exceeded the limit of this world. Rumble. A crackling sound rang out. A bolt of lightning fell from the sky. Lord Go flew backward, spun in the air, and slammed into the building. The entire building shook violently. Bufang put his hands behind his back and looked indifferently at Lord Go. His hand shook. The blue and white porcelain plate flew out. A plate of sweet and sour dragon ribs. Bufang said. Lord Go took the plate, opened his mouth, and sucked. All the ribs went into his mouth in an instant. Lord Go stuck out his tongue and licked the ribs. Then, his aura returned to normal. Heaven King Tai Hang was still standing tall. His terrible aura seemed to blow up this part of the world. I can't believe you can block my finger. After transforming into a titan, my strength is incomparably terrifying. I can't believe a mere high-grade god can block it. Heaven King Tai Hang's pupils constricted slightly. This made the killing intent in his heart soar. This black dog's talent is somewhat exceptional, and so is that chef. If these two fellows stay in the Xiaoyi divine dynasty, it will not be a good thing for the Titan divine dynasty. So, kill. Heaven King Tai Hang focused his eyes. The next moment, he took a step forward. The Titan stood tall, his body almost rushing into the clouds. He clenched his fist, and 1,000 laws spread out. Rumble! A terrifying roar suddenly exploded. Divine power descended. In the direction of the palace, a figure slowly walked over from the sky with his hands clasped behind his back. It was an old man, his white hair waving in the wind. He was very old, and his aura was almost decaying. His eyes were cloudy, but they were full of sharp light. Black Armor was pleasantly surprised when he saw the old man. The Divine Emperor. The expressions of the experts of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty and the Titan Divine Dynasty all changed. The Xiaoyi Divine Emperor had finally made a move. Heaven King Tai Hang jerked his head around and stared at the old man. Even though the old man was so old, he still became the focus of heaven and earth as soon as he appeared. Enough. You've caused trouble in the capital. For the sake of the Titan Divine Emperor, I'll spare your life. You may be spared from death, but you must be punished. I'll cut off one of your arms as a warning to others. The Divine Emperor's magnificent voice rang out, shaking heaven and earth. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. Cut off an arm? His Excellency is going to cut off Heaven King Tai Hang's arm. Will this lead to a war between the two divine dynasties? Cut off one of my arms. Heaven King Tai Hang's pupils constricted. I respect you as the Divine Emperor, so I'll give you some face. Do you really think you're a peak Divine Emperor? Heaven King Tai Hang said coldly. His Titan body moved abruptly, and he threw a punch at the Divine Emperor. Everyone's expression changed dramatically. This is crazy. Is Heaven King Tai Hang high from fighting? This is crazy. That's the Divine Emperor, a top expert who represents a divine dynasty. How dare Heaven King Tai Hang make a move? Lord Go and Bu Fong narrowed their eyes. This old man doesn't seem to be very intimidating, said Lord Go, who had returned to his chubby body and was chewing on a sweet and sour ribs. Bu Fong, on the other hand, was expressionless. How presumptuous! Black Armor flew into a rage. King Pingyang, King Tianlong, and the heads of the various aristocratic families all looked angry. In the direction of the palace, the crown prince glared at him. How dare he disobey my father's divine might? This Heaven King from the Titan Divine Dynasty is courting death. The crown prince had absolute confidence in the Divine Emperor. The Divine Emperor's face was indifferent. Tai Hang's counterattack was beyond everyone's expectation. Even the Divine Emperor was a little surprised. However, he was just a little surprised. Treason! You've offended your superiors. That's one more crime. I'll break your limbs. The Divine Emperor said indifferently. His voice seemed to be a little weak. Heaven King Tai Hang's eyes gleamed. Today, he wanted to fight the Divine Emperor. Boom! It was a punch that could pierce through heaven and earth. That indomitable giant titan was like a giant ape that could shake the heavens. He slapped his chest with both fists, then smashed them down hard. The Divine Emperor's eyes were cloudy as he cleared his throat. Facing Heaven King Tai Hang's punch slowly, he reached out his palm. Then, he raised his palm and threw out a slap. Chapter 1498. Attacking the Divine Emperor was simply the behavior of a lunatic. A deity emperor in his twilight years was still a deity emperor. His strength was incredible. Even if Heaven King Heaven Hang had transformed into a towering titan, his strength would not change much. He was still a high-grade god king. The fact that he dared to provoke the Divine Emperor in such an impudent manner caused everyone present to gasp. But everyone's heart skipped a beat, and some of them even tensed up in disappointment. If the God King was truly defeated, It would be a major event that would shake the entire Chaosverse. The Divine Emperor of the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty was defeated by the Titan Divine Dynasty's Heavenly King. This news was enough to shock everyone. Heavenly King Tai Heng's eyes burst with dazzling light as he punched out. It shook the heavens and earth, as if it wanted to shatter the mountains. The power of this punch was extremely terrifying. This was the deterrent power of a high-grade God King. The Divine Emperor was past his prime. He stood in the void like an old man with one foot in the grave. He calmly faced godly King Tai Heng's punch. A slap flew out. The Divine Emperor said that he would break Heavenly King Tai Heng's limbs. Since the Divine Emperor had spoken, he naturally had to do it. The words of the Divine Emperor represented the Divine Emperor. If he couldn't do it, it would naturally cause the Divine Emperor to lose a lot of face. Rumble. Under everyone's gaze, the Divine Emperor slapped him across the face. It was as if he had shattered the void, and his palm slammed against Divine Emperor Tai Heng's fist. A loud rumble rang out as God King Tai Heng's towering body threw out a punch that collided with the God Emperor's palm. The power of that punch was indeed terrifying. There was a cracking sound. Divine King Tai Heng's fist was covered in cracks like a porcelain doll's. It looked extremely miserable. There was an explosion. Monstrous chi and blood surged out from the cracks. God King Tai Heng's pupils constricted. His blazing body began to crumble, turning into a pile of rubble. It smashed into the ground with a boom, sending up thousands of pieces of debris. One arm was severed. An uproar instantly broke out. At this moment, the whole Divine Dynasty burst into an uproar, and everyone's eyes were filled with fanaticism and worship. This was their Divine Emperor, a Divine Emperor who could help them prop up the world. His Majesty the Divine Emperor was mighty. Black Armor, King Pingyong, and the others all looked excited, clenched their fists, and their auras fluctuated. The experts of the Titan Divine Dynasty, on the other hand, turned pale. As expected, he still lost. Tai Heng was really crazy to deal with the Divine Emperor. The experts of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty also gasped. The power of the Divine Emperor was shocking. God King Tai Heng only had himself to blame. The Divine Emperor clasped his hands behind his back and looked indifferent. His white hair spread out. He wore a dragon robe and walked step by step. One of God King Tai Heng's arms was severed, and blood splattered across the sky. He took a step back. However, the Divine Emperor raised his palm towards his body again. Rumble. The 10,000-year-old laws pervaded the air. The power of countless laws in the sky seemed to converge into an arm, which grabbed Heaven King Tai Heng's other hand and yanked it back. There was a tearing noise. Blood splattered on the spot. Another arm was severed. God King Tai Heng howled miserably, his voice echoing for thousands of miles. However, the Divine Emperor did not stop at all. His face was as stern and cold as ever. Rumble. One slap, another slap, and another. In the face of God King Tai Heng, the Divine Emperor kept throwing out palms as if he were teaching a child. With every slap, God King Tai Heng let out a miserable howl. Cracks appeared on one of his legs, which looked like a pillar that reached the sky, and then it broke into pieces. God King Tai Heng's fleshly body lost its balance, and he fell to the ground with a thud. At the same time, his 100,000-foot-tall Titan body kept shrinking. Finally, he turned into an ordinary person, but his appearance was extremely miserable. Blood gushed out like a fountain. God King Tai Heng's eyes widened. Finally, fear showed on his face. Impossible! God Emperor, you're past your prime. Why do you still dare to attack like this? Aren't you afraid of the suppression of the will of the universe? Aren't you afraid of the calamity? God King Tai Heng roared hoarsely. God King Tai Heng only had one leg left. He flipped to his feet and stomped on the void, creating a hole in it. With a rumble, he soared into the sky. It's none of your business. The Divine Emperor rolled his eyes. Finally, he sent out another palm strike. Heaven King Tai Hang's body exploded, causing him to fall from the void. His 4 limbs were all broken, and he was in an extremely miserable state. Where are black armor and gold armor? The Divine Emperor clasped his hands behind his back, his dragon robe flapping in the wind. Black armor and golden armor transformed into black and golden light respectively and flew over. They knelt before the God Emperor with respectful expressions. Lock up Heaven King Tai Hang's fleshly body and throw him into the dungeon. If you want to ransom him, ask the Titan Divine Emperor himself. The Divine Emperor said. After saying that, he lightly coughed. Let's disperse this matter. If you continue to cause trouble, I won't be polite anymore. The Divine Emperor turned around and hid in the void again. He came and went in a mysterious manner. Everyone kept quiet out of fear, not daring to say anything more. The bearing of a Divine Emperor was indeed terrifying. Lord Go and Bufang were standing on the top of the building, watching calmly. This old man is indeed powerful. Lord Go stuck out his tongue and said. Bufang nodded. The Divine Emperor's strength was the strongest he had ever met. However, Bufang frowned. He had a strange feeling. The Divine Emperor was strong, but he gave Bufang a feeling that he was short of breath. Under the monstrous pressure, there was a sense of emptiness. Bufang shook his head. These things had little to do with him. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth. With his hands clasped behind his back, he glanced indifferently at the experts in the distant sky. The experts of the Titan Divine Dynasty and the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty were all silent. Sure enough, the deterrent power of the Divine Emperor was still there. The fact that a high-grade God King's limbs were broken was absolutely terrifying. The air seemed to be filled with the blood of a God King, and rich energy was spreading and boiling. The Divine Emperor turned and left. The surrounding experts also left one after another. Bufang and Lord Go also returned to the restaurant and closed the door. And so, this storm ended in such a way. In the palace, the Divine Emperor returned with his hands clasped behind his back. He dismissed the eunuchs and maids in the palace and sat straight in his seat. Cough, 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 the Divine Emperor opened his mouth and coughed violently. There seemed to be a hint of darkness on his face. It was as if a unique and profound law was lingering around the Divine Emperor's body. It made him feel an aura of death spreading. The Great Tribulation. The calamity, the Divine Emperor's crown fell off, and his white hair hung loose. He was in severe pain all over, but after enduring it for a long time, he finally opened his eyes. Beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. The Divine Emperor's face was extremely unsightly. Every time he attacked, he would bring forward the Great Tribulation and make the calamity more intense. Even if Bufang's oyster pancake could temporarily suppress it, it would not last long. His many days of cultivation had all gone to waste in today's fight. In fact, the Great Tribulation was even stronger than before. When the Divine Emperor was in his twilight years, a great tribulation would befall him. Because their strength was too strong and beyond the limit, it was their punishment. Huff, 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 the Divine Emperor sat in his chair, panting heavily. After a long time, trembling, he left the palace, put on plain clothes, and turned into a plain old man. Then, he left the palace and headed toward Bufang's restaurant. The night was over. The first ray of morning sunlight was cast on the planet. The battle caused a stir in the entire Divine Dynasty. The Divine Emperor's powerful attack had restrained the thoughts of many people in the court. The Divine Emperor struck with lightning speed, breaking God King Tai Hang's limbs and throwing a heavenly king into prison. It was a deterrent. Everyone who thought the Divine Emperor was in his twilight years changed their mind. The next day, it was the day when the ancient heaven god's relic was supposed to be opened. The experts of the emissary group were all going into the relic, which was the main purpose of their trip. The sun was high up in the sky. The Divine Emperor had just appeared, and he was still as mysterious and majestic as ever. He recited many words. At last, he ended the conversation, raised a hand, and produced a seal. The seal shot into the sky, causing it to tremble. The void twisted and spun, revealing a huge entrance. That entrance was the entrance to the relic. There was no doubt about it. The experts of the emissary group rushed into it. After all the experts had entered, Bufang's eyes widened. A black dog, carrying a bone on its back, followed them. At that moment, the whole world fell silent. After a long time, the crowd burst into an uproar. That black dog had also gone to the relic? Bufang knew very well that the Lord Go had gone to the relic. The Lord Go had told Bufang that he would enter the relic again. However, Bufang did not choose to step into it. A creak rang out. He opened the restaurant's door. Sunlight poured in. Bufang was cooking in the kitchen. His wok tossing and knife skills had already reached the acme of perfection. Just as Bufang was practicing his dishes, in his mind the system's solemn and serious voice, which had not been heard for a long time, rang out. Bufang was taken aback. Temporary task. Please go to the ancient heaven god's relic and help the divine flame devour the laws of the ancient heaven god. Task reward: 1 fruit of law. A temporary task? Bufang's movements paused and he furrowed his brows. It had been a long time since the last task was issued. Bufang did not expect the system to issue a temporary task at this juncture. Moreover, the task was to help the divine flame devour the laws of the ancient heaven god. The system, was it arrogant? Was it too arrogant? Was it that easy to devour the laws of the heaven god? High-grade god kings had 1,000 laws, so how many would the ancient heaven gods have? It was simply a pipe dream for the divine flame to devour the laws of the heaven god. Besides, the heaven god had fallen a long time ago, and the laws of the heaven god were no longer as clear as before. However, the system's task reward made Bufang narrow his eyes. The fruit of law. Another fruit of law. What was the system trying to do? Bufang did not know whether he would comprehend another supreme law of the universe if he devoured another fruit of law. If he did, Bufang would certainly become the first existence in the entire chaotic universe to comprehend 3 supreme laws of the universe. It would be an honor and a source of pride for him. Bufang found that the task reward given by the system was something Bufang could not refuse. Therefore, Bufang fell into deep thought. The contemplation did not last long. Bufang made up his mind. He would enter the ancient heaven god's relic for no other reason than the fruit of law. When the system issued this temporary task, Bufang's heart suddenly beat faster. Suddenly, his heart started to beat faster. If he obtained a few more fruits of law, would he become the first demigod to comprehend all the supreme laws of the universe? By then, how strong would Bufang be? Chapter 1499. The 5 supreme laws of the universe were gathered on a single person at the demigod realm. This was something that had never happened before in the history of time. There should not be such a weirdo in the entire chaotic universe. However, Bufang found that he seemed to have the potential to do so. If he had enough fruits of law, he might really be able to comprehend 5 supreme laws of the universe in the demigod realm. Of course, this was also very difficult. At least, Bufang could feel that the fruits of law would become rarer and rarer as he progressed. However, with this thought in mind, Bufang might not think about how to become a god for the time being. The demigod realm was a realm that laid the foundation. Fang Wuji and Tai Fei, for example, had built a perfect foundation when they were in the demigod realm. They had even comprehended nearly 100 laws when they were in the demigod realm. This kind of foundation was extremely solid. Therefore, even though Fang Wuji had not comprehended the supreme laws of the universe, in terms of fighting prowess, he could crush many young masters who had comprehended the supreme laws of the universe. This might be the legendary saying that quantitative change led to qualitative change. Of course, when the degree of qualitative change surpassed everything, no amount of quantity could create qualitative change. If Bufang comprehended 5 supreme laws of the universe in the demigod realm, not to mention 1 Feng Wuji, even 10 Feng Wuji would be killed in an instant in front of Bufang. It was too terrifying to comprehend 5 supreme laws of the universe at the same time. Lord Go was only a high-grade god, but with the help of the fortune flatbread, he temporarily possessed 3 supreme laws of the universe, and he was not even very adept at using them. Even so, he could still burst out with unparalleled strength to fight against high-grade god kings. It was easy to imagine how monstrous Bufang would be once he really comprehended 5 supreme laws of the universe. Perhaps even heaven and earth would be jealous of Bufang. Earth-destroying thunder strike. Sitting in a chair, Bufang could not help but curl the corners of his mouth as he thought about it. Hades' era widened his eyes and looked at Bufang. He felt that Bufang's smile was a little strange. Therefore, Bufang's current goal was to collect enough fruits of law. This law fruit was extremely mysterious. It could actually help him comprehend the supreme laws of the universe. This proved the rarity of this fruit. Therefore, Bufang would not give up on this mission. Bufang had to go to the ancient heaven god's ruins. Of course, it was also because the system gave Bufang a temptation that he had no choice but to go. The mission would definitely not be simple. In fact, none of the missions given by the current system were simple. Bufang would not simply think that this task was easy. In the kitchen, he was fiddling with ingredients. He was preparing all kinds of dishes. These dishes were meant to be effective in the relic and become Bufang's trump cards. It was the same as preparing enough HP potions when killing monsters. It was the same principle. Oyster pancake, fried oyster, fortune flatbread, heavenly Dao tea, all kinds of supplementary dishes were prepared. He carefully put them into the system's storage space. Of course, in addition to these, there were others. For example, the perishing pot, the death sword pot, and so on. Bufang had also prepared a lot of these dishes. Coupled with Little who was more familiar with the relic, Bufang felt that he would be like a fish in water in the relic. Little who did not enter the relic with Lord Go. It was mainly because Little who's strength was too weak. Of course, if Bufang was included, Little who's strength would not be weak. With the heaven god's blood, the power of the cannonballs Little who spat out was enough to crush everything. You also want to go to the relic. But this time, Bufang did not agree. Hades' era, on the other hand, was too lazy to go. He was having a good time with Luo Sanyang's girlfriends every day. He did not want to waste time in the relic. Besides, he was just a demigod, and he could not get anything good in the relic. Luo Sanyang had already said goodbye to Bufang. The emissary groups of the Titan Divine Dynasty and the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty had all entered the relic, and there were young people among them. So, the younger generation of the Xiai Divine Dynasty did not want to lag behind. They formed a team and stepped into the relic. Luo Sanyang, on the other hand, became a member of this team and set off for the relic. Soon, all the preparations were done. Bufang brought Little who out of the heaven and earth farmland. Little who was holding a spirit fruit in his mouth and eating happily. With the heaven god's blood, Little who already had the ability to influence a part of the world. Like a mascot, he stayed in the heaven and earth farmland and made the living beings and creatures there stronger and stronger. Therefore, Nyohan-san and the others treated Little who as if he was their father, and they treated Little who like an ancestor. This was unthinkable in the past. In the past, if Little who had dared to steal a spirit fruit to eat, Nyohan-san would have chased him to the ends of the earth with a hoe in his hand. He looked at the portal that emerged in front of him. It was the same one that Bufang used to teleport from the great netherworld to the Xiai Divine Dynasty. Powerful runes swirled around them, and it was clear that they were both set up by the same experts. The head of the Luo family looked at Bufang with a smile, his face exuding warmth. The head of the Luo family could not wait to befriend him. After all, he was the lord of the divine chef temple. The black dog and the fox in the restaurant had a great connection with the divine emperor. As long as the divine emperor did not die, Bufang could basically do whatever he wanted in the divine dynasty, and no one would not give Bufang face. Except, of course, for the people of the other divine dynasties. Thank you, family head Luo. Bufang cupped his fist at the head of the Luo family and said. He needed to enter the ancient heaven god's relic. Bufang was going to find the divine emperor, but he happened to meet the head of the Luo family. Every aristocratic family had their own means to enter the relic. So, the head of the Luo family opened it for Bufang for free. Giving Bufang face was a business that was sure to make a profit. Palace Master Bu, it's just something I should do. It's nothing much. Regardless of your relationship with Luo Luo, just based on Palace Master Bu's cooking skills, I should help you. I hope I can eat delicious food the next time I go to a restaurant. Ha ha ha. The head of the Luo family burst out laughing. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly, and he nodded. Those who could sit in the position of the head of an aristocratic family were all wily old foxes, and their words were very pleasant to the ear. Anyway, Bufang was very comfortable listening to them. He exchanged a few polite words with the head of the Luo family. Then, Bufang stepped into the portal. The moment he stepped into it, the head of the Luo family asked Bufang to take care of Luo Sanyang. Naturally, Bufang nodded. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang's figure disappeared into the portal's energy. The head of the Luo family breathed a deep sigh of relief as he watched Bufang disappear. Now that this chef has stepped into the ancient heaven god's relic, I'm afraid that great changes are about to take place in it. The ancient heaven god's relic, every divine dynasty had one, which was formed after the fall of an ancient heaven god. One heaven god might have fallen in this relic, but it was also possible that many heaven gods had fallen here. In ancient times, it was much easier to become a heaven god than in today's chaotic universe. Legend had it that there were many supreme laws of the universe in ancient times, not just the 5 that existed today. Buzz the void trembled. The next moment, a small black hole appeared, which kept expanding and turning into a huge portal. A skinny figure walked out of the tunnel. Swoosh, a gust of wind blew, bringing with it a strong smell of blood. His vermilion robe rustled as Bufang stepped on the solid ground and narrowed his eyes. This was the place where Lord Go and Little Hu had wandered. Little Hu lay on Bufang's shoulder. He did not feel very happy to return to the familiar place. There were no spirit fruits, no Adi, and no Xiaopi here. He was very lonely. As if in a fit of pique, Little Hu turned his head and ignored Bufang. He was angry that Bufang had brought him back to this shabby place. Bufang did not know whether to laugh or cry. This proud Little Hu had become much more arrogant after being stained with the heaven god's blood. He had become much more arrogant after being stained with the heaven god's blood. Rubbing Little Hu's head, Bufang shook his hand. Immediately, an enhanced explosive meatball appeared, and he handed it to Little Hu. Now that there was food, Little Hu's moral integrity disappeared instantly. He opened his mouth and swallowed the bursting, pissing meatball. He did not even chew and directly swallowed it. With food, Little Hu became much happier. Little Hu, do you know where the ancient heaven god fell? Take me there. There are many explosive meatballs, and even perishing pots and death sword pot. Bufang rubbed Little Hu's head and said, if he wanted to obtain the heaven god's law, perhaps he could only find it in the place where the heaven god fell. For this little foodie, only delicious food could tempt him. Little Hu's eyes lit up. When he heard about the explosive meatballs and perishing pots, his eyes narrowed into arcs. Getting angry with the big boss who provided food? That was impossible. That would never happen. Come, Little Hu said. Then, the 9 foxtails swayed. His body turned into a baiguang and shot out in a flash. He landed on the ground in the relic, and kept crawling on the ground, kicking up a cloud of dust and smoke. The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched. With his hands clasped behind his back, he walked slowly and followed behind Little Hu. Bu Fang had comprehended the law of space, so with every step he took, he shortened the distance and doubled his speed. Little Hu's speed was also very cool. He moved horizontally on the ground like a chariot. The man and the beast maintained this strange way of moving quickly through the ancient heaven god's relic. The emissary group of the Titan divine dynasty. The whole group was shrouded in sorrow, and their morale was a little low. The high-grade god king who led them had all his limbs broken and was thrown into the Xiaoyi divine dynasty's prison. This was a huge blow to the whole group. They were left with only a few mid-grade god kings and low-grade god kings. There were also the geniuses from the Titan divine dynasty. They were the most important part of this emissary group. The Titan divine dynasty did not act together with the immortal spirit divine dynasty. To put it simply, the two divine dynasties did not even interact with each other because they were in a state of competition. The Titan divine dynasty's team moved slowly. They were walking through the desolate relic. In fact, these people were no strangers to the relic. There was also an ancient heaven god's relic in the Titan divine dynasty. Therefore, they were not too nervous. A god king once flew over the relic and looked down from above. He suddenly found that the whole relic looked like a human figure. It looked like the corpse of an ancient heaven god, which was frightening. There were treasures everywhere in the relic. If one was lucky enough to obtain a heaven god's blood or a heaven god's bone, he would basically be rich. For cultivators, the heaven god's blood and bone were so precious that they were priceless. Clip-clop, a mid-grade god king of the Titan divine dynasty walked at the front with a gloomy face. Suddenly, he focused his eyes and looked into the distance. Over there seemed to be a silhouette on the horizon, swaying as it approached. Who's there? The god king jumped to his feet, and his eyes seemed to burst into endless brilliance. His divine sense spread out, trying to frighten the other party and force him to retreat. However, to the astonishment of the entire Titan divine dynasty's emissary group, the other party did not seem to have any intention of retreating at all. Step by step, he approached them slowly. Soon, he came in front of the Titan divine dynasty's emissary group. The figure bowed his head and stood where he was. For a moment, the atmosphere was a little stagnant. The mid-grade god king narrowed his eyes. The next moment, he sped away. He landed on the ground with a loud crash. He came to the front of the figure. "Your Excellency, why are you blocking the way of the Titan divine dynasty's emissary group?" the mid-grade god king asked indifferently. However, as soon as he finished speaking, the god king's face froze. That was because he realized that the figure who had lowered his head slowly raised it. The figure had no face. There was only a single crack from which came a chilling laughter. Chapter 1500. There were many kinds of laughter. There were warm smiles and there were cold smiles. There was also a type of smile. Even though it was expressionless, it made people feel as if their bodies were enveloped in coldness, as if they were facing death at any moment. At this moment, this mid-grade god king of the Titan divine dynasty was facing such a feeling. It was as if he was going to die at any moment. This feeling was extremely terrifying. Boom! That figure moved and exploded in an instant. Like a nuclear bomb, the accumulated power was unleashed in an instant. Poochie! There was a loud noise. The mid-grade divine king was instantly sent flying like a cannonball, smashing into the void and causing it to collapse. What happened? At this moment, the emissaries of the Titan divine dynasty were in a complete uproar. They had never imagined that such a thing would happen. In this relic, they were actually besieged. This relic belonged to the Xiaoyi divine dynasty. Could it be that the experts who attacked them were from the Xiaoyi divine dynasty? But something was wrong. The emissaries of the Titan divine dynasty had just set foot in this relic, and they had not even found a single treasure related to the heaven gods. How did he become a thorn in the Shui divine dynasty's side? Why would the experts of the Shui divine dynasty attack them so unscrupulously? This was what they did not understand. The eyes of the remaining few god kings narrowed. All of them unleashed their powerful auras. Like a bolt of lightning, he dashed toward the location where the battle had broken out. Everyone, retreat. The remaining low-grade god king tensed up and ordered the monstrous geniuses behind him to retreat. Those geniuses also seemed to feel the danger. They all followed behind the low-grade god king and retreated into the distance. Tai Fei narrowed his eyes. They had just entered the ruins, and someone had already tried to kill them. Did the experts of the Shui divine dynasty want to kill them because Heaven King Tai Hang attacked the Shui divine emperor unscrupulously? That was possible. But when did the Shui divine dynasty become so crazy? Once this news was exposed, it would definitely cause a war between the two divine dynasties. At that time, it would be a war between two great worlds, and it would be enough to cause a terrible bloody storm. Bang! An explosion erupted instantly. The ground suddenly cracked. The barbaric glyphs on a mid-grade god monarch's body blossomed with blazing light, and his body was instantly sent flying. Bang! Bang! Several godly kings flipped themselves up and landed on the ground. They all raised their heads in fear and stared at the figure in the distance. It was a figure without eyes. There was only a cut on its face, and when the cut opened, mucus flowed out. Hualala, it was extremely disgusting. This fellow was not a human, or rather, he had been pretending to be a human from the very beginning. However, the mid-level god king actually didn't discover it. Pucci, the head of the first mid-level god king, was directly crushed. With a Pucci sound, it exploded. Blood dyed the ground red, divine king blood sprinkled onto the ground. It was scalding hot, still giving off steam. Buzz. The remnant soul of the divine king frantically fled, wanting to flee far away. As long as the remnant soul remained, he would be able to regroup. However, he soon despaired. This creature seemed to have a way to deal with remnant souls. The remnant soul of the god king wanted to escape, but the figure dashed out like a wild beast. He raised his hand and pierced the god king's chest in his remnant soul state. With a ripping sound, he tore the god king's remnant soul apart and stuffed it into his mouth. In front of everyone's eyes, the god king's remnant soul was torn apart and devoured. It was as if he had eaten a delicious hot bun. As if it had tasted the remnant soul, this creature was greatly stimulated. He roared. Then, he flew toward the god king of the Titan divine dynasty. I wonder which king of the Shui divine dynasty you are. We are the emissaries of the Titan divine dynasty. Do you know the consequences of hurting us? Growled a mid-grade god king of the Titan divine dynasty. Unfortunately, the figure ignored him and didn't even bother to answer him. With a rumble, he appeared in front of the god king like a storm. He threw a punch. There was no power of law, but black energy swirled around it. The god king of the Titan divine dynasty raised his palm and collided with the fist. However, in an instant, the god king's palm was smashed to pieces. The god king's pupils constricted. His head was crushed in an instant. From beginning to end, the god king didn't even know how he died. He killed the god king and devoured his remnant soul. Then, he threw his head back and roared. Barbaric glyphs began to flash all over his body. The scene made the experts of the Titan divine dynasty's emissaries' hair stand on end. What kind of monster had they encountered? Why did he have the barbaric glyphs unique to the Titan divine dynasty? Boosted by the barbaric glyphs, the corners of the creature's mouth curved upward into a disdainful smile. He charged out again, but his fighting prowess was even stronger than before. A god king was pressed to the ground and beaten to death. His flesh cracked inch by inch. The faces of the monstrous experts in the emissary group turned pale. Their faces were devoid of blood. They had no idea that something like this would happen. All the mid-level god kings were dead. Run. Don't think about anything. Run. Run to the defensive city the Xiai divine dynasty built in the relic. Now. Without hesitation, the remaining low-grade god king turned his head and roared at the Tai Fei and the other geniuses. The Tai Fei and the others were still in a trance. Because death came too quickly. Run. Run. When they came to their senses, they realized that if they didn't run, they would all die. Rumble. Tai Fei didn't hesitate. He was the strongest, so he was the first to explode. Like a cannonball, he sped into the distance. The other geniuses also fled in a panic. On the ground, that figure, on the other hand, was still showing a creepy smile. The low-grade god king tried to stop him, but he was killed in an instant. With a bang, his body exploded. His soul was devoured. Several god kings had actually died miserably here. Even until their deaths, they didn't know what kind of monster had appeared in the Xiai divine dynasty's relic. Blood flowed, and the ground was covered with broken bodies and broken bones. This small sunken pit seemed to have turned into a pool of blood. In the middle of the pool, there were many pitch-black balls that were emitting a cold glint. The unwilling souls of the god kings were drifting and wailing, filling the area with an aura of death and making it look like a land of ghosts. Tai Fei scrambled to his feet. As one of the top geniuses of the Titan Divine clan, his heart almost jumped out of his chest at this moment. Terrible, too terrible, dead? They're all dead, his friends, the god kings of the Titan Divine dynasty's emissary group. They're all dead. He saw with his own eyes that a top demigod, who had the potential to grow into a high-grade god king, was pierced by that ferocious figure with a finger. The fleshly body that the Titan Divine clan was most proud of couldn't resist at all at this moment. It was all because the other party also knew barbaric glyphs. No. He didn't know them, but copied and imitated them. Yes, that figure was copying and imitating them. He had killed the god king, but he had copied and learned their barbaric glyphs. This was the scariest thing. What the hell is that thing? Suddenly, Tai Fei's pupils constricted. Didn't the Titan Divine Dynasty's emissary group come to this world to investigate the creature described by the Xiai Divine Emperor? Could it be that the Xiai Divine Emperor didn't lie? Does this kind of creature really exist? Tai Fei sucked in a cold breath. When the Titan Divine Emperor learned the news, he thought it was a smokescreen released by the Xiai Divine Dynasty's Divine Emperor, trying to make the other Divine Dynasties fear him when his time was up. Now, it seemed that the Xiai Divine Emperor wasn't lying at all. Tai Fei was filled with regret. If he had known this was the truth, he would never have come to this relic. Now that he was in danger, how could he escape? He was afraid that he would be buried here. Perhaps, only by fleeing to the assembly point set up by the Xiai Divine Dynasty in the relic could he have a chance to survive. There must be a high-grade god king guarding that assembly point. Although this creature was not afraid of mid-grade god kings, it should be afraid of high-grade god kings. Otherwise, with such murderous aura, it might have killed all the creatures in the assembly point. Run! Tai Fei sped away. Rumble! However, a rumble rang out. He froze. In the distance, a figure shrouded in black smoke descended from the sky. Tai Fei felt his whole body stiffen, and the surrounding void was completely sealed. His mind suddenly went blank. He knew he couldn't escape. The figure slowly turned around and opened his mouth. Within his mouth there was a sharp edge. Buzz! It was as if the ground had shrunk to an inch, and numerous afterimages appeared. All of a sudden, he appeared in front of Tai Fei. Black smoke spewed out of its mouth, spraying onto Tai Fei's face. Tai Fei felt as if he had fallen into an icy abyss. Tai Fei took a deep breath. I am the prince of the Titan Divine Dynasty. If you kill me, before Tai Fei could finish his words, fresh blood splashed onto his face. His pupils suddenly shrank to the size of mung beans. It was difficult for him to speak. Whoosh. He spat out blood. Fresh blood flowed endlessly. In the end, it turned into black blood. The figure in front of him began to shrivel up like a deflated balloon, collapsing to the ground. After a long time, Tai Fei's eyes returned to normal. The corners of his mouth curled up as he burped. He gently wiped away the black blood stain at the corner of his mouth. I've finally found a good fleshly body. I've finally evolved to this level. Tai Fei, or rather, he should not be called Tai Fei, smiled faintly. Feeling the formidable power contained in his body, he narrowed his eyes. Pitch-black energy flowed out of him. This fleshly body can only be called good. However, since I've occupied it again, my current strength is only the original power of this fleshly body. However, given my realm, the power I can exert is much stronger than this native. Tai Fei narrowed his eyes. Barbaric glyphs floated over his palm. Then, the law of destruction emerged, which was surrounded by many other laws. It seemed to form a storm. Swoosh. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Little Who landed on the ground, his fur standing on end. The fox's eyes were fixed on the distance. There, blood was flowing and ghosts were drifting. Bufang floated over and frowned. Why is the murderous aura in this place so strong? What happened? This is a broken barbaric glyphs. Bufang's eyes were sharp, and he saw a broken rune floating on the pool of blood. It was glowing brightly. He was no stranger to this rune. Wasn't it the barbaric glyphs carved on the bodies of the Titan Divine Dynasty's experts? The Titan Divine Dynasty's God King died here? There's so much blood and such a strong murderous aura. Could it be that all the emissaries of the Titan Divine Dynasty died here? Bufang sucked in a cold breath. Is the relic so dangerous? I'd better go back and open my restaurant. Bufang thought to himself. No wonder the system gave me this task. There's indeed something strange about this relic. Swoosh. Bufang's heart suddenly skipped a beat. He turned his head and looked into the distance. There, a rustling sound rang out. A figure rolled out of it in a sorry state. It's me. Help me. That figure was covered in blood, and his chest was a mangled mess of flesh and blood. Bufang frowned. Even Little Whose hair stood on end. As the figure drew closer, Bufang finally saw him clearly. The genius of the Titan Divine Dynasty. Tai something Fei? When Bufang saw the figure, he exhaled and looked at him expressionlessly. It seemed that someone from the Titan Divine Dynasty had survived. That would let him know what had happened. This relic is very dangerous. If I can't do it, I'll go back to the restaurant and sell oyster pancake. Tai Fei's body trembled with every step he took, and his shoulders shook as if he had suffered a great terror. Then, he walked toward Bufang. Chapter 1501. Bufang stood where he was with his hands clasped behind his back, looking indifferently at the approaching figure in the distance. This man should be Tai Fei, the genius of the Titan Divine Dynasty. Bufang remembered him. After all, he had seen him before. At this moment, the emissaries of the Titan Divine Dynasty were all wiped out, but this guy in front of him was still alive. It was a good opportunity for Bufang to ask him what had happened. Help me! Tai Fei cried from a distance. Tai Fei said from afar. His hoarse voice echoed through the entire place, causing Bufang's hair to stand on end. It was as if a chill was spreading from the soles of his feet and enveloping his whole body in an instant. Something must have happened to the emissaries of the Titan Divine Dynasty that caused the whole group to be wiped out. Tai Fei's body was trembling with excitement. He saw Bufang, but he didn't reveal his secret. He walked step by step toward Bufang, getting closer and closer to Bufang in just a flash. Bufang's face grew slightly serious as he looked at Tai Fei's miserable appearance. There were black balls floating in the blood pool around him. Bufang was very familiar with them. They were the terrible black balls he had encountered in the great netherworld. They were the black balls that separated him from the Lord Go during the teleportation. This black ball should be nurturing an incomparably terrifying creature. The black ball would hatch a powerful beast, one that could imitate his fighting style and strength. At least, Bufang had never seen such a savage beast. Tai Fei came to Bufang's side, his eyes fixed on Bufang. He could feel a power spreading out of Bufang's body that made his heart palpitate. This power made him yearn for it, but he was also a little afraid. What happened? Bufang asked, looking at Tai Fei. Tai Fei's chest was a bloody mess, and he looked extremely miserable. Obviously, he had gone through a fierce battle. We were ambushed. Everyone is dead, except for me. Tai Fei's face was full of fear and dread. Bufang looked very serious. The relic was really terrifying, and the emissary group of the Titan Divine Dynasty was completely wiped out. That being said, Tai Fei was truly amazing. He was actually able to survive after encountering such a crisis. Bufang sighed. My condolences. Then, his mind flickered. A steaming hot oyster pancake appeared in his hand. He passed it to Tai Fei. Eat it. This oyster pancake can help you recover from your injuries. It was rare for Bufang to be so kind as to give him an oyster pancake. The main reason was that Tai Fei had suffered too much. Tai Fei was taken aback. He subconsciously took the oyster pancake. Under Bufang's gentle gaze, Tai Fei gulped. Eat it while it's hot, Bufang said. Frowning, Tai Fei picked up the oyster pancake and sniffed it. The bun in his hand seemed to exude a strong stench. What? To eat or not to eat, perhaps this was what humans called delicacies. However, to living beings like them, this delicacy was simply like chaff. It was difficult for them to swallow. As they sniffed it, they found it reeking. They liked to eat souls, especially the souls of experts. They were completely obsessed with the taste. Tai Fei hesitated for a moment. He stared at Bufang. He was about to turn hostile. Why should I eat it? If I want to swallow something so disgusting, I might as well kill myself. Bufang ignored Tai Fei. With his hands clasped behind his back, he turned around and looked at the black balls floating in the sea of blood. His eyes turned cold in an instant. He raised his hand and a silver divine flame emerged in the palm of his hand. A terrible power of law lingered over it. After absorbing countless laws, the divine flame now had nearly 1,000 laws, which made it very powerful. Its foundation was even stronger than that of Bufang. Bufang was looking forward to seeing what kind of power the divine flame could unleash after he became a god. Of course, at this moment, it was more than enough to burn the black balls in front of him. He flicked his finger. His divine sense surged. The silver divine flame turned into a stream of light and fell into the blood pool. As soon as it entered the blood pool, it began to boil and burn. Gulp, gulp. The blood in the blood pool was boiling, emitting steam. The silver flames spread out and immediately enveloped those black spheres. Sizzle. The black balls seemed to howl miserably. Black gas began to evaporate from them. The next moment, the black balls were also enveloped by the flame. Tai Fei was stunned. This fellow's flame could burn the seeds he had left behind. Unless a god king made a move, these seeds could not be destroyed at all. This fellow in front of him seemed to only have a demigod cultivation base, but he was so terrifying. Tai Fei had wanted to kill Bufang and devour Bufang's soul. But now, he decided to take his time to think about it. Why aren't you eating? Bufang asked, turning to look at Tai Fei with his hands clasped behind his back. Tai Fei froze. He glanced at the oyster pancake, then shoved it into his mouth. Slurp, slurp. A writhing, disgusting taste spread. It was a nausea that came from the depths of his soul. Creatures like them could not eat human delicacies at all. However, after witnessing Bufang's means, Tai Fei did not dare to act rashly before he recovered his strength. Is it good? Bufang could not help but ask when he saw Tai Fei eating with difficulty. After all, anyone who ate his oyster pancake should not look like this. Perhaps he was still immersed in the grief of the destruction of the emissary group. However, this grief should be turned into appetite. So Bufang's hand shook. He took out another oyster pancake and stuffed it into Tai Fei's mouth. "Don't stand on ceremony. Eat it all," Bufang said. Tai Fei was dumbstruck. Looking at the steaming oyster pancake in his hand, his stomach churned. He really wanted to kill this fellow in front of him. However, he did not think he could defeat him. Delicious. Tai Fei forced a smile on his face, pretending that he was enjoying the food. Only then did Bufang nod his head in satisfaction. "Do you know how to get to the assembly point in the relic?" After a while, Bufang asked Tai Fei. The relic was too big, and it was indeed difficult to search aimlessly for the place where the ancient heaven god had fallen. "I know," Tai Fei said, suppressing his disgust. Of course he knew. He was planning to hide in the human assembly point. Once his cultivation base recovered, he would be able to start a massacre. With this body, his strength would reach the level of a high-grade god king. If he could slaughter an entire city, his cultivation base would be even more terrifying. Tai Fei's eyes flickered with a sharp light. "Okay, take me there," Bufang said excitedly when he heard Tai Fei's words. He took out another oyster pancake and stuffed it into Tai Fei's hands. "Lead the way. This oyster pancake will keep you full," Bufang said. Bufang had done a lot of preparation work this time. He had prepared at least a basket of oyster pancakes and other delicacies. Tai Fei hurriedly waved his hand and said it was enough. Suppressing his disgust, he finished all the oyster pancake. His desire to kill Bufang had reached its peak. However, he did not expose himself. He wanted to wait until his strength recovered to its peak. At the same time, he could use the identity of this body to hide in a human city. When Soul 1 and Soul 2 were here, he would be able to slaughter everyone in the relic. At that time, he would surely undergo another great evolution. Rumble! The light of the fire danced gracefully. Tai Fei sat in front of the bonfire in a daze, not knowing what to say. In front of him, Bufang had built a grill. He had pierced a piece of wood through the body of a spirit bird and placed it over the fire to roast. Eat, eat. He had been eating all the way here. Tai Fei felt that it was a big mistake to follow Bufang. How much did the man in front of him love to eat? He began to eat every few steps. Grilling, frying, charcoal, all kinds of methods, all kinds of human delicacies. Tai Fei was truly amazed. However, in Tai Fei's eyes, all these delicacies were disgusting and hard to swallow. But Bufang was so enthusiastic that he would give him delicious food every time. Tai Fei was so disgusted that he almost wanted to die. Several times, he almost could not hold it in anymore and wanted to twist Bufang's head off. "Who told you to cook more food?" Of course, Bufang's strength still made Tai Fei wary. Therefore, he could only endure it. Now, he could only hope to reach the human gathering point as soon as possible. In that case, he could get rid of this foodie beside him. A delicious aroma spread. Bufang grabbed the wooden grill and blew at it. Hot steam rose, giving off a delicious aroma. He took out several blue and white porcelain jars, all of which were filled with his special spices. It was a perfect match for barbecuing. Bufang blew a breath of hot air and tore off the skin of the spirit beast bird, revealing the tender white meat inside. There was even oil dripping from the meat. The heat was just right and it was extremely delicious. In fact, Bufang also liked this kind of wild delicacy. It was a purely natural delicacy without too much decoration, which made people feel as if they could experience the primitive pleasure after eating it. Bufang tore off a bird's leg. The meat was shredded and attached to the skin. Bufang took a bite. The soft and tender meat made Bufang feel as if he was going to bite his tongue off. Little Who couldn't wait to stare at Bufang. his mouth dripping with saliva. Bufang peeled off a bird's wing and gave it to Little Hu. Little Hu held the wing in his mouth and couldn't wait to eat it. On the other side, Tai Fei was dumbfounded. Tai Fei couldn't help but furrow his brows when he smelled the fragrance. The nausea in his mouth grew stronger. Do you want to eat it too? When Bufang saw Tai Fei's expression, he suddenly understood. As soon as the dragon bone knife appeared, it tore off a piece of the bird's buttock. Handing the bird's buttocks to Tai Fei, Bufang continued to eat happily. Tai Fei looked at Bufang, not knowing whether to throw it away or not. He felt that if he ate it, he would vomit instantly. His hand, which was holding the bird's buttocks, seemed to be shaking. Tai Fei took a bite. Ugh, wretch! His stomach cramped and he couldn't help but throw up. His behavior shocked Bufang. Although Bufang gave him the bird's buttocks, the taste was not much worse than the bird's legs. He didn't have to vomit after just one bite, did he? I'm sorry. I'm a little full. In fact, I'm a little anorexic. Tai Fei wiped his mouth and said to Bufang. His eyes flickered. He was afraid that Bufang would get suspicious. However, if Bufang became suspicious, he had no other choice. He had to kill this human in an instant. Bufang took a bite of the bird's meat. He nodded thoughtfully. Anorexia. Interesting. Fortunately, you met me. I can cook all kinds of delicious food. There must be a kind of food that you won't get tired of. Trust me. Leave your anorexia to me. I will make you fall in love with the delicious food. Bufang tore off a piece of bird's meat and said seriously. What? Tai Fei was bewildered. What did Bufang just say? A moment later, in front of his frightened eyes, Bufang summoned the black turtle constellation wok, the white tiger heaven stove, the dragon bone knife, and other kitchen utensils. All kinds of ingredients were piled up around him. Bufang sharpened his knife, ready to show his skills. As a man who wanted to become the god of cooking, who stood at the top of the food chain in the fantasy world, it was absolutely not a problem to cure anorexia. Chapter 1502. The emissary group of the Titan Divine Dynasty had been wiped out. In fact, not many people knew about this. However, in the distant Titan Divine Dynasty, it caused a small commotion. Rumble! Terrible blasts were blowing as a huge figure, who seemed to be able to prop up the sky, walked slowly among the mountains and rivers. The figure was tens of thousands of feet tall, and his whole body was engraved with strange barbaric glyphs. As the figure sped forward, soon, he arrived in front of a stone palace. The silhouette shrank and landed on the main road of the palace. Then, it sped away and rushed into the palace. At the top of the palace, there was a gentle-looking young man reading a book. Your Majesty, the life lamps of the emissary group have all gone out. The newcomer's aura was strong, and when he opened his mouth, it was as if he was roaring, causing the whole palace to tremble. Dirt kept falling from the roof. Calm down. Cultivate your body and nourish your mind, understand? The Titan Divine Emperor said calmly, holding the book in his hand. What do you know? There are nearly 100 emissaries, but except Tai Heng's life lamp is still on, the others have all gone out, including Tai Fei's. The newcomer roared again. He could not stay calm at all. What are you panicking about? Tai Heng is lucky that he's not dead after attacking the Shui Divine Emperor. He is now being held in prison and needs me to ransom him. The Divine Emperor said faintly. He shook his head and stared at the book in his hand, looking somewhat Buddha-like. Your son, Tai Fei's life lamp, has gone out. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Black lines appeared on the expert's forehead. Oh! The Titan Divine Emperor finally frowned. He turned his head and looked at the expert. What did you say, Tai Shan? The Titan Divine Emperor asked. Tai Shan was a little speechless at the Titan Divine Emperor's slow reaction. He shook his hand. Immediately, barbaric glyphs flickered over his palm, and then an image emerged. In the image, One by one, the flickering life lamps were extinguished in an instant. The remnant souls in the lamps all howled miserably and eventually faded away. The remnant souls scattered, and the life lamps went out. The Titan Divine Emperor's eyes narrowed. He put away the scroll, and his scholarly aura immediately dissipated. It was as if a wild beast had awakened. Tai Fei was my favorite son, but he died just like that. This emperor must get to the bottom of this. The Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty. If all this is really done by the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty, I will kill them until not even a blade of grass grows. Roar! Roared the Titan Divine Emperor. Tai Shan nodded. This was the correct style. He narrowed his eyes. The fact that the emissaries of the Titan Divine Dynasty were wiped out in the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty made him furious. Tai Shan, go to the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty at once and ask the Xiaoyi Divine Emperor to give me an explanation. I have nothing to say about him imprisoning Tai Hang, but destroying my emissary group and killing my son. I will not rest until one of us is dead. Do you really think the 3 million Titan soldiers of the Titan Divine Dynasty are just for show? Boom! The Titan Divine Emperor was furious. His aura erupted, causing the whole palace to tremble as if it was about to crack. Tai Shan received the order and immediately shot out. He turned back into a giant and ran wildly on the ground in the relic of the ancient heaven god. Soon, they arrived at the gathering place in the relic. Bufang saw the city from a distance. It stretched for hundreds of miles, with towering walls and experts from various powers walking on it. Tai Fei followed at Bufang's side with a lifeless look on his face. A string of fragrant pancakes hung around his neck. They were specially made by Bufang to help him overcome his anorexia. Tai Fei's anorexia was a problem for even Bufang. No matter how delicious the food was, Tai Fei did not even frown when it was placed in front of him. He had no appetite at all. This was amazing. It was the first time he had encountered such a strange symptom. Along the way, Bufang had tried his best to make Tai Fei feel the charm of food. Unfortunately, he failed in the end. I've added a special spice to this pancake, which can amplify the aroma of food to the extreme. Hang it around your neck for 49 days, and it will definitely cure your anorexia, Bufang said solemnly to Tai Fei. At first Tai Fei refused. However, he could not dissuade Bufang, so he chose to accept it. Tai Fei saw the city. He narrowed his eyes. He could feel that there were terrible existences in the city. In fact, the top experts of the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty were all stationed in the ancient heaven god's relic, and high-grade god kings rarely appeared in the capital. This was why Black and White could do whatever they wanted in the Divine Dynasty's capital. Bufang came to the front of the city. The city gates opened immediately, and no one asked him anything. Those who could come here were all experts from the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty. Little Hu lay on Bufang's shoulder, wagging his tail and rolling his big eyes. With a string of pancakes hanging around his neck, Tai Fei entered the city and said to Bufang, "We've arrived at the gathering place. Let's part ways here." He could not wait to get rid of Bufang. He must have been a fool to go to Bufang. This human is like a stone in a latrine pit, stinky and hard. I can't kill him, and he keeps forcing me to eat disgusting human food. The next time I meet him, I'll twist this human's head off. You're leaving? Then remember, you can't take off the pancake on your neck. You have to wear it for 49 days. Bufang reminded him seriously. People with anorexia needed to be cared for and sympathized with. After all, it was a painful torture not to be able to enjoy delicious food. Tai Fei flew away. Bufang's face gradually grew serious as he watched Tai Fei leave. Little Hu hugged Bufang's head and squeaked. I know this guy is not normal from the beginning. Bufang touched Little Hu's head and said lightly. From the moment he saw Tai Fei, Bufang felt an indescribable fear in his heart. The true form of his divine sense in his spirit opened its eyes and felt a sense of disgust from the bottom of its heart. It was a feeling he had only felt when he saw the terrible creature in the netherworld. When he saw those black balls, Bufang knew that it was that creature who had destroyed the emissary group. Tai Fei, on the other hand, was exuding a strange aura. If it weren't for the fear in his heart, Bufang would not have dared to make a move. Perhaps the moment he saw Tai Fei, Bufang threw the black turtle constellation walk at him. He hoped that the high-grade god kings there would be able to deal with them. Tai Fei walked to the corner. His face twisted ferociously as he pulled the pancake off his neck and threw it hard to the ground. Damn human! I'll remember you. When my cultivation base recovers, I'll definitely eat your flesh and blood. Blurg. Tai Fei reached out a finger and picked at his mouth, trying to dig out the food in his stomach. After a long time, he left with a cold look on his face. He was going to lie low, and when his cultivation base recovers, he would turn this relic into a sea of food for him. The gathering place was a small city, not as big as the capital. However, it could only be regarded as a temporary gathering place. The fundamental purpose of the Xiai Divine Dynasty's experts was not to live here, but to explore the relic of the ancient heaven god. However, there were also ancient heaven gods guarding this place. After all, there were also some powerful savage beasts in the relic, which were very aggressive to invaders. Bufang walked slowly. Here, Bufang did not meet any acquaintances. For example, he did not see Luo Sanyang, the young master, and the others who had entered the relic. After all, the relic covered a large area, and it was very difficult to find them. According to the system's task, Bufang needed to find the place where the ancient heaven god fell, because only there would the remnant soul of the ancient heaven god remain. Only the remnant soul contained the power of law. After walking for a while in the gathering place was very lively. It could be regarded as a city made up of adventurers. The strength of the experts here varied greatly. There were low-grade gods, mid-grade gods, high-grade gods, and, of course, god kings. However, most of them were still in the god realm. These gods had put down their usual high and mighty attitudes and were shouting non-stop. They were shouting to form teams to explore the relic together. Yes, it was a very funny situation, but it was really happening. After all, the relic was full of places, and the strength of one person was limited. If there was a team, it would be very easy to obtain benefits in the relic. Bufang thought for a moment and felt that it was not right for him to just barge in. Although Little Who said he knew where the ancient heaven god fell, Bufang found it hard to believe that he was leading the way in a daze. So, Bufang made up his mind. He walked up to the god who was shouting in the distance. He was a mid-grade god. He was dressed in combat equipment. A demigod? The mid-grade god narrowed his eyes slightly. Bufang nodded and said, "I want to ask, how do I get to the place where the ancient heaven god fell?" "The place where the ancient heaven god fell? Are you crazy? You want to go to that place? Only god kings dare to go there." The mid-grade god rolled his eyes at Bufang's words. Having been in the relic for so long, he knew very well where the danger was and where the safety was. After all, adventurers like him, who wandered on the edge of death, had a very keen sense of danger. "I'm just asking," Bufang said with a straight face. "If you look down from the sky, you can see that the relic of the ancient heaven god is shaped like a human. Some people say that the whole relic is the body of an ancient heaven god, but in fact, it's not. At least 3 ancient heaven gods have fallen in this relic." The mid-grade god rubbed his hands and looked around. It seemed that no one wanted to join his team, so he chatted with Bufang. He began to explain some common sense to Bufang. "So we divided the relic into 3 areas: the safe area, the dangerous area, and the dangerous land. The area where the assembly is located is a safe area with a radius of 3,000 miles. If you go further out and enter the upper half of the body, you will enter the dangerous area, and the head is the dangerous land. It is said that there is a high chance of finding heaven god bones and heaven god blood there. Although it is a dangerous land, it is also a treasure land. The mid-grade god took out a blade of grass, rubbed it into a cylinder, put it in his mouth, lit it, and exhaled a puff of smoke. He looked exactly like an experienced adventurer. This is the enchanting grass, which grows in abundance in the relic. Do you want one, little brother? It's 10 source stones for one, the mid-grade god said. The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched slightly when he got the information he wanted. As for the enchanting grass, Bu Fang gave the mid-grade god a deep look and shook his hand. A spicy strip appeared in front of him, and he put it in his mouth like Era had done. He took a bite and the spicy taste spread in his mouth. This was the real enchanting grass. If I may ask, which direction should I go to the head? Bu Fang asked. The mid-grade god froze. Is there something wrong with this demigod's brain? How dare a mere demigod step into the head? That area is the playground of god kings, and those who are not strong enough will die in vain if they enter it. Seeing that the mid-grade god did not say anything, Bu Fang shook his head. After looking around for a while, he turned and walked in the direction of a team recruited by a low-grade god king in the distance. The mid-grade god was left with a disdainful look on his face. A mere demigod wants to join such a team. How ridiculous! However, the next moment, the mid-grade god's eyes went wide. Chapter 1503. Are the teams of god kings so careless about quality nowadays? Even a demigod can sneak into that team. He saw the low-grade god king, who was usually high and mighty, and had his eyes on the top of his head, holding out a hand to the demigod with a smile on his face. The ecstasy grass in the mid-grade god king's mouth fell to the ground. Ashes fell all over the ground. Even if he was looking for cannon fodder, he should have found a better one, right? However, the god was left in shock. As for why Bu Fang joined the god king's team, it might become a question in his mind forever. Bu Fang saw an acquaintance. He didn't expect to meet an acquaintance here. Summer, who had left the divine chef temple and stepped into the ancient heaven god's relic, was surprised to meet him here. It was because of Summer's presence that Bu Fang's joining the team became a matter of course. As for the reason for joining, Summer did not say much to the God King's team. She just said that he was a chef from the divine chef temple, who was very good at cooking and was good at cooking supplementary food. Supplementary food? The eyes of the God King's team lit up. The so-called supplementary chef was equivalent to the existence of a wet nurse. This was crucial for a team. Previously, Summer would also cook some supplementary delicacies, but Summer was not a professional after all. Now that a professional chef had joined the team, the God Kings naturally welcomed him. In the ancient heaven god's relic, the chefs of the divine chef temple had always been very popular. Even if he was just a demigod chef, welcome to the team. The leading God King smiled gently at Bu Fang. This person was a mid-grade God King. He had a handsome appearance and his eyes seemed to be shining. Bu Fang nodded. He glanced at Summer and was surprised to meet her here. Let's go. We're in a hurry. Summer was not surprised by Bu Fang's arrival. Many things had happened in the relic recently, and the probability of the heaven god's bone and blood appearing had become very high. It was not surprising for Bu Fang to appear in such an opportunity. After all, the appearance of fortuitous opportunities meant that more and more people would enter the ruins. All right, little brother Bu, just follow behind us. You don't need to fight. You just need to provide us with food. The cooking skills of the divine chef temple's chefs are trustworthy. The man smiled warmly, giving people the feeling of a spring breeze. The group did not waste any more time and immediately set off. They left the place and walked into the distance. This was a team of 5 people. All of them were God King level experts. Including Bu Fang, there were 6 of them. 5 God Kings and a demigod. It was a rather strange combination. Among them, there were 2 mid-grade God Kings and 3 low-grade God Kings. Their overall strength was very strong, not weaker than the Titan Divine Dynasty's team that had entered the relic before. There were many adventurers in the ruins. Some powerhouses spent their entire lives wandering in the ruins in order to become an ultimate existence. As a result, there were many God-King level powerhouses in the ruins. The main reason was that there were a lot of resources in the ruins. Many of the treasures left behind by the ancient heaven gods, such as the heaven gods' blood and bones, were of great benefit to one's cultivation. There's no need to introduce Summer. You already know them. These three are three brothers. Their strength is at the level of a low-grade god-king, and they have secret arts. The man smiled warmly. I'm Tian Qiu, a cultivator from the Tian family, a top aristocratic family in the Xiaoyi Divine Dynasty. The man said to Bufang as they walked. Bufang nodded. After the latter finished speaking, he turned his head to look at Xiachen, revealing a warm smile. It's rare for our team to invite Your Excellency to join us, so we're sure to gain a lot this time, Tian Qiu said with a smile. This man likes to smile. However, Summer was not very interested in his smile. She turned her head and ignored him. The six of them walked out of the gathering place and came outside the city wall. Tian Qiu waved his hand. A rumbling sound rang out immediately. A warship floated out of the city wall. It looked quite ferocious, much more ferocious than those in the capital of the Divine Dynasty. It was surrounded by sharp edges and corners, and there were weapons and cannons hovering above it. Its face was covered with strange runes. This is a battle-type warship, specially made by the Tian family for me. Tian Qiu smiled. The Tian family was a very powerful warship supplier in the capital of the Divine Dynasty. Its strength was not much weaker than that of the Zhao family and the Luo family. Rumble! Bufang and the others climbed onto the warship. Under Tian Qiu's control, the warship rumbled. Under Tian Qiu's control, it spewed hot air and sped into the distance. Then, it disappeared in a flash. Bufang sat cross-legged in the warship and did not say a word. He could feel the contempt of the others in the warship for him. Except, of course, for Summer. Summer knew his ins and outs. Bufang had thought that Summer had gone to find Mu Hongzi, but he didn't expect her to stay in the ruins. As for the others, including Tian Qiu, who had been smiling, Bufang could feel a sense of contempt. Bufang was not surprised. After all, his strength was only that of a demigod. Rumble! The warship rumbled and shot forward. It lay across the land of the ruins. The assembly point was located at the navel of the heaven god's body. The higher it went, the closer it was to the danger zone. From the neck to the heart, it was considered a danger zone. The quality of the warship was excellent. At least, it flew very fast, and everything around it was disappearing rapidly. During the flight, he also saw many strange warships galloping at high speed. Each of them was left with mottled marks, which were the marks of battles and the pride of battle-type warships. We've passed the safety zone and are now entering the danger zone. Sit tight. Once we've entered the danger zone, it's not safe even to stay in the warship. Many spirit beasts will attack the warship, Tian Qiu said. His expression also became much more serious. Summer twitched her mouth and turned to look out of the window. This woman has always been so cold. Outside the window, the gloomy sky kept flying by, and white clouds could be seen drifting in the sky. Our destination this time is a forbidden land. I've received information that there is a great chance that there will be heaven god bones in that dangerous place. Tian Qiu said to the people present. Tian Qiu said to the people present while concentrating on controlling the warship. The warship streaked across the void. It rumbled violently. Below, there were towering trees. Terrible bestial roars rang out. That forbidden land is located at the top of the danger zone, close to the head area. The head area is very dangerous. Even with the strength of our team, I'm afraid we'll be wiped out if we break into it. So later, everyone must cooperate with me, especially little brother Boo. Don't run around. Just stand at the back of the team and provide us with supplies. Tian Qiu reminded him. Bufang nodded. He felt that this man was noisy. Rumble. Finally, the warship stopped flying. It hovered in midair. With a clanging sound, the door of the warship opened. The crowd stepped out. All of them were armed to the teeth. The three brothers did not utter a single word. They stepped out of the cabin and leaped off the ship. They fell to the ground like meteors, kicking up a cloud of dust. Don't use divine power at high altitude. It's easy to attract the attention of flying savage beasts. It's common sense to get off the warship and land with your physical body. Tian Qiu said. Summer and Bufang also landed, but they didn't cause too much of a stir. Tian Qiu put away the warship and landed as well. Tian Qiu walked at the front. Following the route provided by the intelligence, he led Bufang and the others into the depths of the dense forest. The spiritual energy in the forest was so rich that it almost condensed into water droplets. Bufang even saw spiritual energy crystals on some leaves. The spiritual energy here was even richer than in his heaven and earth farmland. Along the way, Bufang observed the surrounding plants. When he saw some spirit fruits, he would also put them into the farmland. Tian Qiu naturally wouldn't say anything about this kind of thing that was not out of line. He just thought it was some professional habit of a chef. They walked all the way. After walking for an unknown period of time, the sky also turned pitch black. At night, the dense forest was colorful, and all kinds of vegetation were blooming with bright light. It was beautiful. However, under this beauty there was an extremely terrible crisis. No one dared to relax. Everyone was on high alert. Even Bufang was a little nervous. Rest here and pitch a camp. We'll move forward tomorrow. We're not far from the Forbidden Land, but we're not in a hurry to enter. Let's get our bearings before we go in. Tian Qiu said. The others didn't say anything and just sat down on the ground. For these experts, they didn't need to pitch tents or anything like that. They just found a clean rock and found a place to rest. It was Bufang's favorite time again. Bufang glanced at the crowd, then turned and walked into the dense forest. Before long, he was holding a spirit beast in his hand. After skillfully removing the fur and skin of the spirit beast, Bufang began to cook the barbecue. All kinds of spices were sprinkled, and the aroma filled the air. At some point, Summer had come to Bufang's side, staring at the bonfire. Tian Qiu frowned, but he didn't say anything. He just looked at the sky and seemed to be worried about something. The dish was ready. Summer couldn't wait to grab half of it and began to eat it, not caring about her image at all. Slurp, slurp. The meat was tender and juicy, and Summer gobbled it up. It had been a long time since she had eaten such a delicious dish. Although she was the deputy palace lord of the Divine Chef Temple, her cooking level was not high. After all, she was not a chef. Ever since she tasted Bufang's food, she had been completely captivated. Perhaps this was one of the reasons she chose to bring Bufang with her. The aroma wafted through the air, making Tian Qiu and the others a little embarrassed. That was because their stomachs had failed to live up to their expectations and were growling. However, they were not very familiar with Bufang, so they were too embarrassed to come over. The three brothers snorted coldly with cold faces. In their opinion, since this demigod had accepted their protection, he should provide them with food at this time. They had no foresight at all. Bufang naturally didn't pay attention to the three brothers. He grabbed the spirit beast meat and ate happily. This spirit beast was a bit like a rabbit. Because it lived in this forest full of spiritual energy, its meat was very soft and tender, melting in one's mouth like tofu. The spirit beast's leg, in particular, was a little more chewy than the soft meat, which added to its delicious taste. Bufang and Summer ate happily. One by one, the bones fell to the ground. The three brothers were furious, but they didn't say anything. After all, Summer's face was there. If it were only Bufang, the three brothers would have slapped him. They had killed countless demigods. Suddenly, a series of rustling sounds rang out. Tian Qiu and the others frowned. They jumped to their feet. Savage beasts are attacking, Tian Qiu bellowed. The next moment, his aura fluctuated and surged. As his aura emerged, it was like a fuse, causing the rustling sound to suddenly explode. Bam! A rumbling sound rang out. A black shadow suddenly flew over from a distance. It was as fast as lightning and extremely terrifying. It's a low-grade blood beast king, Tian Qiu bellowed. The next moment, the aura all over his body surged. He raised his hand and his bones made a cracking sound. He threw a punch at the void. Boom! The terrible power of law lingered. His punch landed on the blood beast's body, causing it to fall into the distance and shatter several trees. Boom! The three brothers also jumped up in an instant. They stared coldly at Bufang. Damn you! You've attracted the attention of the blood beasts and exposed our whereabouts. A guy like you is not qualified to be on our team. The three brothers glanced coldly at Bufang. Summer stood up, a cold look on her beautiful face. Blame Bufang? Ridiculous. The aroma of food would not attract savage beasts like the blood beast. At most, it would attract the attention of some ordinary spirit beast. The top blood beast kings all had their own will, and only things related to heaven gods would attract their attention. The three brothers threw the blame on Bufang without distinguishing between right and wrong. They had gone too far. Tian Qiu sent the blood beast flying with one move and said nothing. It seems that there's no time to rest. Let's move on and enter the Forbidden Land at night. I can feel many blood beasts coming our way. Tian Qiu gave Bufang a deep look. It was a meaningful look. This is the first time. If you cause another conflict in the team, I'll kill you. Remember, you're just a demigod. If it weren't for Summer, who do you think you are? Tian Qiu said. His tone was a little cold and stern. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned into a stream of light and rushed into the depths of the dense forest. The three brothers sneered coldly as they looked at Bufang coldly. Summer frowned. Bufang spat out the meat bone in his mouth and twitched the corner of his mouth. You're really good at throwing the blame to me. I, Bufang, am not that easy to take the blame, Bufang said lightly. Then, he exchanged a glance with Summer, then rushed into the depths of the forest. There was a price to pay for making Bufang take the blame. Chapter 1504. Blood fiends were a kind of mutated savage beast. Because they were stained with the heaven god's blood, they became extremely fierce and powerful. This kind of creature mainly lived in the danger zone and the head area of the ancient heaven god's relic. In the head area, there were even top-notch blood beast kings comparable to high-grade god kings. It was indeed rare for Bufang and the others to encounter blood fiends in this danger zone. Were they attracted by the food cooked by Bufang? This was absolutely impossible. Blood fiends had no interest in food, and they didn't even know what food was. Bufang and Summer shot out. They wiped the oil from the corners of their mouths and kept up with Tian Qiu. Tian Qiu was very fast. Because he had been discovered by the blood fiends, he didn't bother to hide himself. Like a flash of lightning, he rushed toward the Forbidden Land, trying to get rid of the blood fiends. Blood fiends were actually somewhat similar to ordinary savage beasts. They also had a sense of territory. It was difficult for ordinary blood fiends to overstep their territory. Boom! The blood fiends opened their mouths, and blood-colored energy kept bursting out of them. The energy bombarded the ground and blasted holes one after another. Bufang's figure moved, his vermilion robe flapping noisily. Like a blood-colored lightning bolt, he moved at high speed. The surrounding trees were collapsing. In the night, the falling trees caused a deafening roar, which caused one of the sleeping blood fiends to open its blood-red eyes. Buzz, these awakened blood fiends also joined the army of pursuers. They sped toward Bufang and the others. The terrible aura made Tian Qiu's expression change dramatically. He never thought that there would be so many blood fiends chasing after them. If they couldn't get into the Forbidden Land in time, they might all be torn apart by the blood fiends. Bufang and Summer were very fast, which surprised Tianqiu. Bufang was just a demigod, but he could keep up with them. But that was good. At least he didn't hold them back. In fact, even if Bufang held them back, they wouldn't pay any attention to Bufang, not even for a moment. Boom! The blood fiends turned into a series of afterimages as they flew across the ground. The entrance to the forbidden area was right ahead. Tianqiu couldn't help but get excited, and his breathing became rapid. He stomped his foot down, and the ground collapsed. It was as if a human figure was speeding into it. The three brothers quickly followed behind him. Summer and Bufang were also unwilling to fall behind. Roar! Outside the forbidden area, it was as if there was an invisible wall that isolated these blood fiends. They were roaring angrily and their eyes were emitting blood-red light, but they were unable to step into the wall. This was because the forbidden area belonged to the territory of other blood fiends. The three brothers stood outside and looked at the horde of blood fiends. Their scalps went numb and they felt a lingering fear. A man walked in front of Bufang, and his face suddenly became ferocious. He threw a punch at Bufang's face. Buzz, Summer's gaze shifted. Layers of space appeared in front of the fist. His fist hit empty air. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back and looked at the man indifferently. "You damn demigod! We almost died because of you. Do you know that?" The man roared. "Don't think I can't kill you just because Summer is protecting you. If you dare to cook again, I'll nail you to death here," the man said coldly, raising a finger and pointing at Bufang's face. In the distance, Tianqiu's expression kept changing, but he didn't come up to stop them. This time, it's little brother Bu's fault. Tianqiu sighed with emotion. With Tianqiu's support, the three brothers became more and more imposing. Summer twitched her mouth. Bufang was very calm, but his eyes were not very friendly. He, Bufang, was not someone who anyone could point a finger at. "If you point at me again, I'll definitely cut off one of your fingers," Bufang said. The three brothers didn't expect that Bufang, a demigod, would dare to resist. Their eyes narrowed and a fierce look appeared in their eyes. "Are you courting death? So what if I point at you?" The three brothers unleashed their auras at the same time, which linked together and turned into a terrible torrent. They wanted to force Bufang to bow his head. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back, and his face grew colder and colder. Summer, on the other hand, smiled coldly. She stood behind Bufang. All right, we're all teammates. Let's be nice. We still have to complete the task together." Tianqiu hurried out to smooth things over. Bufang glanced at Tianqiu, which made him feel a little guilty. "For the sake of Tianqiu, I'll spare you. If there's a next time, I'll break all your bones inch by inch. We three brothers grew up in the relic, and we've never been afraid of anyone," the three brothers said coldly. Tianqiu nodded with a smile. These three brothers were also ruthless men, and they were good teammates for him. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth. He raised a hand and pointed at the faces of the three brothers. "Who do you think you are?" Bufang said. "You're just a guy who only knows how to hide behind a woman. How dare you point at us? You're courting death." The three brothers' fiery tempers were ignited in an instant. They just didn't like Bufang. This guy only knew how to eat. He had eaten all the way here, but he didn't even know how to show filial piety to them. Boom! The power of law exploded in an instant. The laws of the three brothers merged into one and blasted at Bufang. In their opinion, a mere demigod was nothing at all. They could kill him in an instant. Rumble! The power of law seemed to turn into a storm, trying to tear Bufang's body to pieces. Bufang looked indifferently at the three brothers. He turned his head to look at Xiaozhi, who shrugged his shoulders. Then, Bufang turned back. He raised his hand. In his hand dazzling golden light burst forth, and the roar of a dragon and a tiger resounded through the air. A golden dragon soared into the sky, as if a dragon's soul was coiling in it. At this moment Bufang's aura rose steadily. Over his head, the law of transmigration and the law of space spread. As soon as this happened, Tian Qiu's pupils constricted, and he fell into a state of shock. The supreme laws of the universe? And there are two of them? Tian Qiu took a deep breath. Apart from the Crown Prince, was there anyone else in the world who could comprehend two supreme laws of the universe? It was unbelievable. The three brothers felt their hair stand on end. However, a fierce look came over their faces. So what if he comprehended two supreme laws of the universe? A demigod was a demigod, and the three brothers were god-kings. How could they be afraid of a demigod? Fight! The three brothers roared. Their figures disappeared from where they were. The three brothers grabbed their daggers. As the daggers streaked across the sky, they actually tore through the air, causing the void to explode. Against the power of law, they rushed toward Bufang. Bufang was only a demigod, and the supreme laws he comprehended were not perfect. What did they have to fear? Bufang was a genius, and it was good that he was a genius. The three brothers liked to kill geniuses the most. His hair fluttered in the wind. Bufang held the dragon bone kitchen knife and watched indifferently. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. He watched as the three brothers sped toward him. Bufang slowly swung the knife. Buzz, a dazzling dragon light flashed. The kitchen knife of affliction, Bufang said. His voice was like the chanting of Buddha, shocking heaven and earth in an instant. The void cracked. A blade light slashed across the sky. That blade light illuminated the dark night as if it was daytime. Puff, puff. The three low-grade god-kings felt their blood and energy fluctuate. They coughed up blood, flew backward, fell to the ground, and staggered back. Their bodies were covered with knife marks and dripping with blood. They, three low-grade god-kings, were defeated? Tian Qiu was stunned. Could a demigod be so strong? Summer was very satisfied with their shock. Did they think they could underestimate him just because he was a demigod? Now they had been taught a lesson, hadn't they? How dare they throw the blame to Bufang? The demigod in front of them was the lord of the divine chef temple, and he was very fierce when he was angry. Bufang held the dragon bone kitchen knife, his face indifferent. He stepped into the air step by step. With the supreme law of the universe and his divine power, it was not surprising that he could defeat three low-grade god-kings. And that was because he had yet to unleash his divine flame. Once he did, these three guys would be crippled even if they did not die. Buzz Tian Qiu appeared in front of Bufang. His face was full of smiles. In the end, he had stopped Bufang. If he allowed Bufang to attack, perhaps the three brothers would really die. Even if they did not die, Bufang and the three brothers would be seriously injured. This was not what he wanted to see. He had made so many preparations just to enter the Forbidden Land and get that opportunity. If he was disturbed by a chef, he would die of depression. Bufang looked coldly at Tian Qiu. Then, he put away the kitchen knife and slowly turned his head. Our paths are different, and we can't work together. Throw the blame to me, and it's even more impossible for us to work together. I'll take my leave now, Bufang said. After speaking, he floated away. His figure shifted and disappeared into the darkness. Xiachen laughed coldly and followed suit. Tian Qiu did not care about Bufang's departure, but his heart ached when Summer also left. However, in order to protect the three brothers, Tian Qiu had no choice. However, his eyes grew much more sinister. He only hoped that the three brothers could really bring him enough benefits. I can't believe you chose to leave the team. Then you and I are competitors. Once they find out about the opportunity in the Forbidden Land, it may become an obstacle to me. I must find it as soon as possible. The opportunity left by the ancient heaven god must be extraordinary. Those who stop me will die. Tianqiu stuck out his tongue and licked his lips. Then, he turned and sped away. The three brothers, who were coughing up blood, were bewildered. If Tianqiu had not protected them, they would have been killed by that chef. Were all demigods nowadays so terrifying? Let's go. We have to find the opportunity in the relic before they do. Tianqiu's cold voice drifted over. However, he was very confident because he knew the specific location, while Bufang and Summer had no idea where the opportunity was. Rustle, fallen leaves swirled in the air. Tianqiu and the three brothers traveled through the night, and before long, they came to a huge hole in the ground. The hole was extremely dark, but there seemed to be a faint blood-red light spreading in its depths. A strong sense of temptation seemed to make the pores in their bodies excited. It was as if something was calling them. Tianqiu and the three brothers were overjoyed. It was an opportunity left by a heaven god. The four of them rushed into the hole. It led to the depths of the hole. They couldn't wait for the opportunity. After Tianqiu and the three brothers rushed into the hole, the ground around the hole slowly cracked open. One black ball after another emerged, emitting a terrifying dark aura. It was like a demon baring its sharp fangs and claws, ready to devour its prey. Tianqiu and the others rushed into the hole, and soon, there was no more news from them. After a long time, the leaves rustled. Bufang and Summer slowly walked out of the depths of the dense forest. They came to the hole. They looked at each other and found that this should be the place of opportunity left by the heaven god that Tianqiu had mentioned. There might be the heaven god's bone or the heaven god's blood in it. Summer narrowed her eyes. She was going to step toward the hole. Summer slowly approached, and as she approached, the black spheres around the holes slowly cracked. The dense cracking sound spread through the void, causing Summer's hair to stand on end. Boom! A loud explosion rang out. Suddenly, a miserable howl rang out from the hole. Following that, a black beam of light shot out from the hole in the ground. Chapter 1505. The beam of light that shot out from the hole in the ground startled Xia Xia. Without hesitation, she unleashed the law of space, superimposed the void, and flew back to Bufang's side. Wherever the black beam of light passed, the void kept cracking. It was extremely terrifying. What is this? Summer's pupils shrank as she sucked in a cold breath. She felt a great sense of terror. This, Bufang narrowed his eyes as he looked at the familiar black balls. As they cracked, pitch-black creatures kept crawling out of them. These creatures might have just been born, so their strength and aura were very weak. The strongest among them was only at the level of a demigod. These should be the strange creatures that the divine emperor mentioned. Bufang said. So many? Summer was also taken aback. She had always thought that the divine emperor was just old, so he would be alarmed whenever he encountered something. Now, it seemed that was not the case at all. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back, his eyes slightly furrowed. This was the heaven god's relic, but it was occupied by so many black creatures. This was not good news. Crack, crack. The black creatures that were born began to devour each other. Even if they were of the same kind, they would bite them mercilessly. It was a brutal scene. It was as if they were raising venomous insects. As they devoured each other, only the strongest were left. Where did these creatures come from? Why are they so strange? Summer's face was slightly grave. Buzz, with a thought in her mind, her divine sense shook the void. The next moment, she raised her hand and swept it out. Buzz, the void began to crack. The law of space spread, heading toward the black creatures. Puff! A soft sound rang out. These newly born black creatures were not strong at all. They were only at the level of a demigod. After devouring their own kind, they could only reach the level of a god. Faced with Summer's attack, they were easily killed. A gust of black smoke pervaded the air. All of the creatures born from the black balls exploded. Boom! A terrible rumble rang out in the hole. The black beam of light that towered into the sky showed that there was definitely a great terror in the hole. That's the destination Tian Qiu mentioned. There are things left by the gods there. Tian Qiu and the three brothers should have already stepped inside, Summer said. Her eyes were filled with seriousness. Well, if there's a big guy in that pit, I'm afraid Tian Qiu and the three brothers won't be able to survive, Bufang murmured. He clasped his hands behind his back and slowly walked forward. Those creatures that were crushed by Summer were actually slowly recovering. They were like a pool of mud, slowly recovering. Unkillable? His recovery speed is so strong? Xia Chen was a little bewildered. These creatures were not weak, so killing them was very easy. Buzz, Bufang raised his finger and flicked it, and the divine flame sprang out. The silver divine flame was like a blazing sun in the endless darkness, illuminating everything. Boom! The flames immediately spread, burning fiercely, covering these black creatures. TSS. Under the burning of Bufang's divine flame, these creatures were instantly turned into ashes. Summer looked at Bufang in surprise. The flame just now made her heart palpitate. The power of Bufang's flame was getting stronger and stronger. Come on, let's go in and have a look, Bufang said. Summer nodded. They couldn't turn a blind eye to the secret in the hole. If the laws of creatures were allowed to devour each other, they might grow into existences even more terrifying than top blood beast kings. Darkness surged. Bufang and Summer stepped into the hole. Their figures slowly disappeared. As soon as they stepped into the hole, Bufang and Summer felt a heavy feeling of falling. The black gas around them kept spreading. However, with the support of Bufang's divine flame, the black gas could not invade them. Boom! It was like a falling meteor. The black gas disappeared, and everything in front of them became clear. A strong smell of blood drifted over, making Summer and Bufang's pores shrink. What they saw was a sea of blood. Broken corpses and drifting bones. The scene was a little familiar to Bufang. It was just like the emissary group of the Titan Divine Dynasty that had been wiped out. Is that the Heaven God's bone? Summer's eyes narrowed, and she fixed her eyes on the center of the hole. There, a sparkling and translucent little finger bone was floating there. Endless mysteries lingered on the little finger bone. At the side of the little finger bone, there were 2 drops of blood floating in the air. The blood was flowing. The Heaven God's bone and the Heaven God's blood. It's rare to see these things here. It seems that the information Tian Qiu received is correct. But she was a little puzzled. Tian Qiu and the 3 brothers had entered the hole first. Where were they? They had seen the Heaven God's bone, and it was impossible for them to let it float there. I'm here. All of a sudden, the entire cave reverberated with his voice. Tian Qiu's figure slowly walked out of the darkness, followed by the 3 brothers. The 3 brothers bowed their heads, making it impossible to see their faces clearly. Tian Qiu? Bufang and Summer both turned their eyes and rested them on Tian Qiu. The latter's face was as calm as ever, and he looked at Bufang and Summer with a gentle gaze. Is this what you're looking for? This is the real treasure of this hole, the Heaven God's note. Tian Qiu raised his hand. In his palm, a broken piece of ancient parchment floated up. The Heaven God's note? The legendary Heaven God's note that records the Heaven God's divine power? That gave Summer pause, and then she sucked in a cold breath. Summer's law gushed out, and her divine sense surged. The space in front of her split open, turned into a huge machete, and swept out fiercely. With a slash, a black-armored savage beast was cut in half. The spatial slash was her extremely powerful killing method, as well as her divine power. Under normal circumstances, she would not use it easily, because this mystic ability carried too many stories. Of course, Summer couldn't care less at this moment. Bufang clasped his hands behind his back. He stared at Tian Qiu. Tian Qiu was also looking at Bufang. His face was gloomy and terrifying. Step by step, Tianqiu walked toward Bufang, holding the letter in his hand. Although you're only a demigod, your aura smells so good and attractive. You're much better than this body, Tianqiu said greedily as he took a step forward. Bufang's face was calm. Bufang had no sympathy for these savage beasts. With a shake of his hand, the dragon bone knife appeared in his hand. You're the one who made me take the blame, aren't you? The heaven god's note has always been with you. That's why those blood fiends chased after you. Is it because I didn't give you anything to eat? Bufang put down the velvet rope that tied his hair and said faintly. The corner of Tianqiu's mouth twitched, and his appearance became more and more ferocious and terrifying. A black insect-like armor covered his body. Yo, you've guessed it, Tianqiu said. So what if I guessed it? Are you going to hit me? As soon as he finished speaking, Tianqiu's pupils constricted. He found that Bufang had disappeared in the distance. When he reappeared, he was right in front of him. The space trembled, and the law of space fluctuated. Smack. With a straight face, Bufang threw out a slap and slapped Tianqiu in the face, causing him to stagger back a few steps. You, Tianqiu glared at him. I've never seen someone ask for a beating like you, Bufang said faintly. With a shake of his hand, an oyster pancake appeared over it. A strong aroma filled the air. With a shake of his hand, the oyster pancake flew toward Tianqiu. Didn't you want the chef to replenish your blood? Here, I'll replenish your blood, Bufang said lightly. A strong aroma filled the air. Tianqiu's pupils constricted, and his stomach churned as if he was about to vomit. Hey, are you anorexic too? You're like a friend of mine. Don't worry, I'm a professional in treating anorexia, Bufang said in surprise. Boom. Tianqiu finally flew into a rage. Damned human. I'm going to tear you apart, bite off your broken soul inch by inch, and devour it. Chapter 1506. To soul demons, the aroma of human delicacies was the ultimate stench. When they ate it, they would vomit incessantly. So, they hated human food from the bottom of their hearts. Buzz, the heaven god's note, was put away by Tianqiu. It was a very good bait. He had attracted countless human experts along the way, from the weak to the strong. He ate them to his heart's content, which made his cultivation base constantly grow stronger. Rumble. The emergence of the black carapace made Tianqiu look even more ferocious. His aura fluctuated violently, carrying an extremely terrible and violent aura. Even the void kept crumbling under the bombardment. Crack! With a sweep of his palm, he cut the oyster pancake in half. A rich aroma immediately spread and lingered in Tianqiu's mouth and nose. It made his stomach churn again. How could it be so disgusting? Bufang focused his eyes, grabbed the dragon bone knife, and slashed it out. Buzz, thousands of knife lights burst forth, turned into beams of dazzling light, and rose into the sky, colliding with Tianqiu. Rumble. Tianqiu did not move. His aura fluctuated more and more, almost breaking through the shackles of the mid-grade god-king realm. But his breakthrough was different from that of humans who relied on the power of the law. Die! A ripping sound rang out. Tianqiu's figure sped out of the black hole. His speed was simply too fast. As he approached Bufang, he threw out a punch and a claw. Even the void was constantly torn apart, as if it couldn't bear the heavy burden and was wailing in pain. Bufang focused his eyes. His yin and yang Taodai arm gripped the dragon bone kitchen knife and raised it. It collided with the claw. Sparks flew in the darkness. A terrible force rumbled in an instant. Bufang felt that the force was so strong that it was unstoppable, and his whole body was knocked flying backward. In the distance, Summer was entangled by the three brothers. The three brothers were dead, but they were under Tianqiu's control. They were like savage beasts, constantly pressing on Summer. If Summer hadn't comprehended the law of space, she might have been killed in an instant. Even if he used spatial slash to slay a gigantic beast, he would not be able to do so. The two halves of the giant beast's body wiggled for a moment before recovering. This kind of situation made Xia Xia feel incomparably frightened. The vitality of these monsters was too strong. Or rather, it was too strange. It was as if he had no weaknesses. Although he only had the strength of a low-grade god king, because he wasn't afraid of getting injured, he was actually suppressing Xia Xia. Even the Summer was in danger. Where did this kind of creature come from? Summer sucked in a cold breath. Bang! The entire cave was constantly cracking, and the walls were filled with cracks. It was as if it would collapse at any moment. The heavenly god's bone and heavenly god's blood floated in the air. Normally, when it appeared, it would become the focus of everyone's attention. But now, no one was interested in it. Boom! Bufang flipped over and stood up, his feet stomping on the ground. Every step he took caused the ground to crack. Tianqiu shot forward. His whole body was shrouded in black armor, and each piece of the black armor opened and closed as if it was breathing. Trash human! You only know how to run? Where's your previous arrogance? Tianqiu's face was ferocious, and he kept roaring. His speed was very fast, and he kept chasing after Bufang. His eyes flashed, and waves of divine sense kept surging out, trying to blast Bufang's divine sense. For soul demons, soul attacks were what they were best at. They could replicate the attacks of humans and everything about them. They could even replicate the divine abilities that humans were proud of. Of course, they could not copy the power of law because it required comprehension. Without comprehension, they naturally could not use it. However, Tianqiu was devoured, so this soul demon could use his power of law. This made Tianqiu even stronger at this moment. He had an immortal fleshly body and formidable fighting prowess, which was not much weaker than that of a high-grade god king. Bam! He threw a punch. The whole underground cave was about to collapse. It exploded with a rumble. Bam! Bam! 3 explosions rang out. The 3 brothers, who had been suppressing Summer, rushed out of the ground and let out terrible bestial roars. Their voices rang out in the dark night, making many savage beasts in the relic feel a chill. Countless blood beasts were shuttling back and forth, rushing madly toward the site of the battle. The heaven god's note, the heaven god's bone, and the heaven god's blood, almost all the precious things in the relic were gathered here, so it naturally attracted countless experts. At this moment, because of the outbreak of the battle, many experts who were exploring the danger zone noticed something unusual here. They looked at each other and all flew toward this place. Summer was a little flustered, panting violently. This was the first time she had been forced to this extent. As a god king who had comprehended the supreme law of the universe, she had been favored by the heavens since she was born. This kind of situation was really rare. Wounds appeared on her beautiful face, and crystal beads of blood flowed out of them and splattered on the ground. The 3 savage beasts grew larger and larger, blotting out the sky. They were extremely terrifying. Xiaji turned his head to look at the ruins. There, Bufang was being suppressed by Tianqiu, who was even more terrifying. She did not know whether he was dead or alive. However, he should not be able to escape. Tianqiu was a mid-grade god king, and coupled with that strange power, no matter how monstrous Bufang was, he could not stop him. After all, Bufang was only a demigod. How could a mere demigod resist an existence close to a high-grade god king? He should not be able to resist. Boom! The ground exploded. Bufang flew out of it. He put away the heaven god's bone and blood, his face extremely cold. Tianqiu chased after him. Every time he attacked, the void exploded. If he had not comprehended the law of space, he might not have been able to avoid it. Explosions kept ringing out, and trees were collapsing. One by one, the beasts chased after them and surrounded the battlefield. The blood beasts were roaring, their terrible voices shaking heaven and earth. Not only did the blood beasts notice it, but so did the human experts. This battle had shocked many people. How could they attack so unscrupulously in the relic? If they attracted a top blood beast king, they would not be able to escape. The experts did not dare to get close. The deterrent force of the surrounding blood beasts was too terrifying. Even mid-grade god kings could only watch from a distance. It seems to be Princess Summer. Is she being besieged? What are those three? They seem to be the savage beasts that have been spreading like wildfire recently. They can imitate the power of clones. In the distant void, several experts watching the battle sucked in their breath. The deterrent force of the three brothers frightened them. Even Summer was suppressed by them. What else could they say? Rumble. Bufang landed on the ground and sped all the way. His figure moved rapidly through the dense forest. With the law of space opening the way in front of him, Bufang moved hundreds of meters with every step he took. That was why Tianqiu could not catch up with him. Tianqiu's eyes grew colder and colder. He fixed his eyes on Bufang's moving figure. Then, his eyes burst into blood-red light and he roared. This was the soul attack unique to the soul demon. Once hit, the soul of a demigod would be completely obliterated. Even if it missed, it was enough to turn Bufang into a fool. This attack was like an awl that was constantly approaching. Then, with a thud, it hit the back of Bufang's head. Bufang felt as if he had been pricked by a small stone. He turned his head suspiciously and scanned his surroundings, but he didn't find anything unusual. This made him more and more puzzled. Tianqiu's eyes widened in disbelief. How could he be unscathed? Even a mid-grade god king could not withstand his soul attack. How could Bufang, a demigod chef, be unscathed? Damn it! Tianqiu did not believe it. His body rumbled, and his scales spread out as if they were spewing hot air, making him move faster. Then, he rushed into the distant sky and approached Bufang. Buzz, a scaled knife emerged, which looked like a fin and seemed to be breathing. It slashed down, spewing black smoke. Die! Tianqiu growled. Bufang swung his kitchen knife and slashed out with his divine power. It was the chef's path of affliction. 99,999 slashes converged into one and collided with Tianqiu's move. Boom! Bufang felt a tremendous force coming at him. He barely blocked the blow. He had to use his divine power to resist it. I see it. I see it. You're dead. Tianqiu's eyes lit up and then he sneered. He shook his hand. The scaled knife slashed out. The dense saber qi immediately spread out. It turned into a knife that blotted out the sky. This knife, it cut a ravine in the sky. Boom. The oppressive aura made Bufang suck in a cold breath. Boom. The invincible power of the vermilion robe erupted and blocked the blow. Bufang landed on the ground and took several steps back. Tianqiu fell to the ground, his eyes red and his mouth wide open. He panted excitedly, black smoke spreading from his mouth and nose. He can even imitate a divine power? Bufang narrowed his eyes. He felt that this was a tricky situation. Tianqiu was stronger than the creature in the netherworld. However, Bufang had also become stronger. His mind flickered. Little Hu immediately jumped up and landed on Bufang's shoulder. Little Hu sensed Tianqiu's aura, and his fox fur stood on end. He bared his teeth. Bufang raised his hand and slapped Little Hu's butt. Instantly, a thud rang out. Little Hu spat out an explosive meatball. The aroma filled the air. Tianqiu felt nauseous. He slashed out his knife and collided with the explosive meatball. Boom! An explosion broke out. Tianqiu turned his head away. Bufang's eyes lit up. It seems there's a chance. Can I use the aroma of food to suppress this creature? Bufang nodded slightly. He slapped Little Hu's butt and told Little Hu to keep spitting. Meanwhile, Bufang grabbed the perishing pot. He stuffed it into Little Hu's mouth. Little Hu's eyes widened. The heaven god's blood spread all over his body. The next moment, he opened his mouth and let out a shrill cry. Boom! A huge recoil erupted. The perishing pot suddenly spewed out of Little Hu's mouth. The pot spun and approached him. It was as bright as the sun in the dark night. It was dazzling and dazzling. The whole relic seemed to be enveloped by this light. Tianqiu's eyes widened. An aroma assailed his nostrils. Someone actually uses food as a means of attack? Damn it! The human chefs should be completely wiped out. Tianqiu roared. The perishing pot fell. It exploded with a boom. With a bang, a huge explosion swept across the whole place, and Tianqiu's figure was completely devoured. Chapter 1507. It was extremely fragrant, but for Tianqiu, it was so stinky that his scales did not dare to open their mouths to breathe. A terrible explosion swept across the whole place, causing everyone present to gasp. This was the perishing pot, Bufang's strongest means. After being enhanced by Little Hu, its power was several times stronger than the original one. In just a flash, it devoured Tianqiu. Of course, he didn't know if the power of the perishing pot could kill Tianqiu. Under normal circumstances, it should not have been possible. Rumble! The terrifying explosion seemed to have turned into a blazing white hemisphere. The hemisphere continued to expand, causing the surrounding trees to collapse one after another. Under the devouring of the white hemisphere, the trees were turned into ashes. In the sky, Summer turned gracefully. The law of space swirled above her head as she pointed out a finger. The finger pierced the head of one of the three brothers. With a bang, the man's head exploded. However, the man's head was still slowly recovering. The surrounding experts landed on the ground and stared at the battle in the field. The three brothers staggered a little in the air. Summer was a little puzzled because she felt that the pressure that enveloped her body had become a little weak. It was a very strange feeling. Why did the pressure weaken? Under normal circumstances, the pressure should be getting stronger and stronger. Blarg! In Summer's eyes, the three brothers suddenly lay prone in midair, opened their mouths and retched. Their eyes widened as if they were suffering some kind of torture. What's going on? Summer was a little confused. Buzz, the sound of something piercing through the air, approached at full speed. Bufang hovered at Summer's side and narrowed his eyes slightly. With a flick of his finger, a divine flame flew out and plunged into the heads of the three brothers. A twisting explosion ensued. The bodies of the three brothers exploded under the burning of the divine fire. The divine flame could completely kill these soul demons because it contained too much power of the law, which was far beyond the self-healing ability of the soul demons. The three brothers were completely killed, turning into pieces of flesh that scattered all over the ground. As the light faded, so did the aroma. Tianqiu was in a sorry state. The scale armor on his body was tattered, and he looked miserable. He lay on the ground and vomited as if he wanted to throw up everything in his stomach. Xia floated beside Bufang, looking at Bufang in bewilderment. How did you do it? She was a little confused as to why Tianqiu was vomiting on the ground instead of attacking Bufang. Delicious food, for these creatures, is the exact opposite. It is filled with a foul smell, and when they smell it, they will feel uncomfortable and want to vomit. Bufang said. While these creatures were vomiting, they could strike. I wanted to suffocate them to death, but it was still a little short. Bufang felt a little regretful. Roar! The surrounding blood fiends roared in unison. These blood fiends pounced on Tianqiu like crazy, trying to bite him to death as he lay on the ground vomiting. However, just as the blood fiends were about to approach, Tianqiu jerked his head up. His eyes were so fierce that he looked like a real savage beast. With a flip of his hand, a blade light instantly slashed out. The densely packed blade light cut the blood beasts into two halves. Tianqiu rolled over and rose to his feet. Of course, he would not let Bufang go so easily. If he didn't kill this chef who had disgusted him, the anger in his heart would not be appeased. However, because he had the heaven god's note in his hand, these blood fiends kept pouncing on him. Because of this, he was held back and could not move forward anymore. Glancing at the surrounding blood fiends, Tianqiu's eyes showed a cold look. He licked his lips, and a fierce aura soared into the sky. The blood fiends that were charging toward them stopped in their tracks. The eyes of the surrounding experts lit up. It was very unusual that these blood fiends were attracted by Tianqiu. Unless it was a large piece of the heaven god's bone or a dozen drops of the heaven god's blood, ordinary blood fiends would not be so crazy. Little Hu lay on Bufang's shoulder, wagging his foxtail. Bufang streaked across the sky like a meteor and crashed to the ground. Tianqiu did not chase after him, which made Bufang and Summer breathe a sigh of relief. Unless Bufang used a drop of the god of cooking liquid, he might not be able to kill Tianqiu now. After all, Tianqiu was close to the level of a high-grade god king. The explosion of the perishing pot could only disgust the opponent with its aroma. As for killing him, it was basically impossible unless Bufang's strength made another breakthrough. Roar! One by one, the blood fiends pounced on Tianqiu and enveloped him. The eyes of some experts also lit up. Tianqiu's strange behavior made them realize that he had something good. With something good in his possession, their hearts were naturally a little restless. Suddenly, a rumble rang out. A monstrous black smoke spread out. The blood fiends that pounced on him were killed by Tianqiu. A murderous aura surged from Tianqiu's body. His eyes were red, and the scales on his body moved as if they were inhaling and exhaling black smoke. He couldn't find Bufang, so he turned to look at the experts around him. "Is it fun to watch?" Roar! Tianqiu's voice rang out. Then, he turned into a stream of light and rushed toward the experts around him. A massacre broke out in an instant. Summer sped away with Bufang, folding the void and fleeing at top speed. In an instant, the two of them had crossed tens of thousands of miles. When they landed, Summer's face was a little unsightly. For her, even though she had the law of space, it was still a big burden to use this kind of escape method. Bufang looked at Summer's pale face. With a shake of his hand, an oyster pancake appeared, and he handed it to Summer. Summer naturally would not refuse. Her eyes lit up, and she grabbed the oyster pancake, stuffed it into her mouth, and began to eat it. The two of them were still in the dense forest. The towering trees around them rose and fell one after another. Bufang found a place and sat down cross-legged. The trees were lush, and their umbrella-like leaves covered everything. "We've now entered the head area. This area is very dangerous, and even high-grade god kings can fall here," Summer said as she ate the oyster pancake. Of course, from her appearance, there was no vigilance at all. She didn't look like she was in a dangerous place at all. Bufang sat cross-legged. With a thought, a sparkling heaven god's finger bone appeared in his hand. This phalanx wasn't very big, but it seemed to possess supreme power. It was as if it wanted to attract Bufang's spirit and make Bufang sink into it. The heaven god's bone? You actually got it? As soon as the heaven god's bone appeared, it was as obvious as a flame in the dark. Summer was surprised. She didn't expect that Bufang would obtain this finger bone in the battle with Tianqiu. The finger bone floated in Bufang's palm, and his mind sank into it. Buzz, all of a sudden Bufang's eyes focused. There seemed to be thousands of beams of light shooting out of the heaven god's finger bone, flying toward Bufang's Taotai arm. It was stuck in the palm of the Taotai arm. Like melting ice and melting snow, it fused into the Taotai arm. Both Summer and Bufang were shocked by this scene. There's such a thing? Bufang seemed to feel the heaven god's bone slowly melting and spreading into the Taotai arm, giving his arm supreme strength. It was a very wonderful feeling. Although his cultivation base hadn't increased, He felt that the punch he threw out was much stronger than before. The power of the heaven god's bone seemed to be absorbed by Bufang. In the distance, seeing Bufang's strange expression, Summer's expression changed. She hurriedly unleashed her space-folding power. The power spread and enveloped the surroundings, isolating Bufang from everything around him. This is the head area. How could he take out the heaven god's bones so recklessly and attract a top blood beast king? That's a nightmare, Summer murmured. She didn't know if it was too late to cover everything up now. She only hoped that the blood beast's sense of smell was not so sensitive. Buzz, a drop of blood emerged from Bufang's palm. It was the heaven god's blood. It also possessed supreme power, and was something that god kings crazily coveted. Summer was stunned. Bufang had not only brought out the heaven god's bone, but also the heaven god's blood. They had gained a lot from this trip. Except for the heaven god's note from Tianqiu, they had obtained all the other good things. Bufang flicked his finger. The drop of heaven god's blood flew toward Summer. It was as if space had frozen. Summer raised her palm and caught the drop of blood. She gave Bufang a deep look, then closed her eyes and fell into deep thought. Buzz, her divine sense enveloped the heaven god's blood. The next moment, the heaven god's blood flew into their mouth. Boom! It was as if invisible waves of air were shooting out from all directions, surging non-stop. The next moment, the wheel of law emerged over their heads. It was as if they were wrapped in blood. Bufang's mind settled. As the heaven god's blood entered his stomach, it seemed to wash Bufang's body and replace the blood in Bufang's body. However, a supreme force suppressed the power of the heaven god's blood, preventing it from completing the blood exchange. Buzz, under the pull of the heaven god's blood, Bufang's mind slid to the bottom as if it were on a roller coaster. With a bang, everything seemed to explode. It was as if it had plunged into a misty sea of stars. Bufang opened his eyes, which shone brightly. This is the Sea of Law? Bufang took a deep breath. Crack, crack, the shield that enveloped Bufang and Summer shattered. The aura of the heaven god's blood and the heaven god's bone attracted the attention of the powerful blood beasts and experts around. Some experts broke through the air and arrived. Some blood beasts were circling. A loud phoenix cry resounded throughout the relic. It was a blood-colored phoenix, flapping its wings, with flames burning in its eyes. A terrible aura spread like a storm. Summer, who was sitting cross-legged, felt her heart throbbing, and she opened her eyes. The power of the heaven god's blood had been absorbed by her, and she felt that her strength had skyrocketed. In an instant, she had comprehended more than 100 laws. Her cultivation base was infinitely close to the level of a high-grade god king. This drop of heaven god's blood was worth hundreds of years of cultivation for her. And there were no side effects. The heaven god's blood was the essence accumulated after the heaven god's death. It could help people improve their cultivation base and transform their bodies. Countless people wanted it. Summer didn't expect that she would be such a lucky person. However, feeling the terrible aura around her, Summer's expression changed. Dark blood phoenix. A top-grade blood beast king. An existence equivalent to a high-grade god king. Summer sucked in a cold breath, a look of horror in her eyes. Even with her current strength, she might not be able to fight against a high-grade god king. She didn't expect that they would be targeted by a top-grade blood beast king. It was not just this dark blood phoenix. Around them, there were also several faintly discernible auras that locked onto them. There was no doubt that there were several blood beast kings eyeing them covetously in the surrounding void. The heaven god's bone and blood in Bufang's body. They had attracted too many blood beast kings. They had escaped from Tianqiu's means. However, they were going to die in the mouth of a blood beast king. Summer's face was extremely pale and bloodless. Chapter 1508. It was a real phoenix. Wherever it passed, dark flames burned and turned it into a sea of fire. A terrible aura filled the air, as if it was about to turn into a storm and sweep through heaven and earth. It was extremely eerie. Summer was trembling all over. Facing a top blood beast king was a huge pressure on her. After all, with her strength, it was extremely difficult for her to face a high-grade god king. The dark blood phoenix's feathers were as red as blood, and the phoenix crown on her head twisted and fluttered like flames. She flapped her wings, causing the void to tremble. The blood phoenix's eyes were like gems, blooming with dazzling brilliance as she stared at Summer and Bufang. A terrible pressure fell on them. In the surrounding void, streams of terrible aura were drawing them in. Without a doubt, there were also many blood beast kings approaching. These blood beast kings might have been pressured by the dark blood phoenix to stay away. After all, the pressure brought by the dark blood phoenix was too great. Rumble! The void trembled. In the distance, figures could be seen looming. They were high-grade god kings who existed in the head area of the ancient heaven god's relic. They hid in the void and looked in Summer's direction. They even wanted to help, but this place had already become a paradise for blood beast kings. Summer looked at that area with a pale face. In the end, those high-grade god kings restrained their auras and left. There was no doubt that these god kings had given up on Summer and Bufang. After all, they were not stupid to offend a group of blood beast kings for a mid-grade god king and a demigod. The actions of these experts made Summer even more desperate. The dark blood phoenix opened her mouth, and a loud phoenix cry resounded through the sky. The surrounding blood beast kings also retreated. The goal of these blood beast kings was the heaven god's bone and blood. Of course, there was also competition among them. Now that the dark blood phoenix was here, the other blood beast kings could only retreat unwillingly. After all, the heaven god's bone and blood, which almost fell from the sky, made these blood beast kings green with envy. They could get them without any effort, unlike the other heaven god's bone and blood in the relic, which almost had to go through a terrible fight to get them. The dark blood phoenix seemed to be smiling proudly. She flapped her wings, isolating this part of the world, and continued to approach Xia and Bufang. She wanted to devour Bufang and obtain the heavenly god's bone and blood in Bufang's body. Summer trembled, but she still stood up. The power of law surged. The law of space spread out and wrapped around her body. Buzz, his body suddenly bent and then bounced back. Xia Chen didn't hesitate to launch an attack. Even if it was a blood beast king, she still had to go all out. She wasn't willing to die here just like that. Boom! The dark blood phoenix's body was surrounded by the law of darkness. It opened its beak and let out a phoenix cry. It was accompanied by black phoenix flames. The flames burned, almost burning Xia Tian's law power to the point of distortion. The collision instantly broke out in the void, and terrifying explosions rang out continuously. Xia's figure fell to the ground, and she kept throwing out law ribbons. However, he was forced to retreat by the flames. A look of disdain appeared on the dark blood phoenix's face. This puny human divine king actually wanted to resist her invasion. What a joke! Although the dark blood phoenix was not a pure-blooded phoenix, she was by no means weak. Even in the phoenix nest, she could be considered a top existence. Moreover, she had been contaminated by the heaven god's aura in the ancient heaven god's relic. Her strength was much stronger than that of an ordinary phoenix in the phoenix nest. Boom! Summer's face turned pale. Her law of space was blasted apart and she kept retreating. Her face was pale and she coughed up blood. Her aura was weak. Even with the supreme laws of the universe, she was still at a disadvantage when it came to the confrontation of laws. A high-grade god king blood beast king was simply too strong. Their fleshly bodies were strong, and so was their power of law. Am I really going to die here? There was a look of reluctance in Summer's eyes. She turned her head and glanced at Bufang, who was sitting cross-legged. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry when she saw that Bufang could still calmly cultivate at this moment. Bufang probably didn't know that he was about to die. At this moment, Bufang, his mind sank into a mysterious place. Yes, it was the Sea of Law. The Sea of Law was the place where Bufang had obtained the supreme laws of the universe. Bufang was no stranger to this place. However, what puzzled Bufang was why he was here at this moment. He hadn't eaten the fruit of law, so why was he here? Did the heaven god's blood have the same effect as the fruit of law? Bufang furrowed his brows slightly. Strolling in the Sea of Law, Bufang could feel the origin of laws floating like stars. They radiated kindness toward him. It was a wonderful feeling. Following the route in his memory, Bufang walked all the way until he reached the depths of the Sea of Law. There were 5 origins of laws floating here. These 5 origins of laws were extremely dazzling. Compared with the origins of laws outside, the difference was like the difference between starlight and the moon. Oh! He had arrived at a familiar place again. Before this, Bufang had obtained 3 supreme laws of the universe. Transmigration, space, what can I get this time? Bufang was suddenly curious. However, Bufang felt his vision blur, which startled him. After all, the heaven god's blood was just the heaven god's blood. Its effect was not as powerful as the fruit of law, so it could not stay in the Sea of Law for too long. Bufang had to make it quick and choose a law. However, for Bufang, who had comprehended 2 supreme laws of the universe, it was more difficult for him to obtain the recognition of another supreme law. At least, those laws were just floating, and they were not as eager as before. It was no wonder that it was so difficult to comprehend more supreme laws. Bufang spread his divine sense. Bufang's divine sense was wrapped in the aura of the god of cooking's menu. As soon as it came out, the power of laws swarmed toward him. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched slightly. With a rumble, his vision became blurry, and then it completely exploded. As for which law he had obtained the recognition of, Bufang did not know. Bufang slowly opened his eyes. A golden wheel of law emerged over his head. Summer, who was on the verge of despair, was stunned. The approaching dark blood phoenix also paused, feeling a little puzzled. Boom! The next moment, the sky above the relic changed. Thunderclouds rolled over. Purple thunderbolts churned in the clouds. The golden wheel of law appeared, tearing the void and causing countless thunderbolts to flash. Bufang exhaled and felt the aura rising in him. He could feel a majestic power emerging. How strong was someone who had comprehended 3 supreme laws of the universe? Bufang did not know. Perhaps the Lord Go, who had eaten the fortune flatbread, knew. A purple thunderbolt smashed down. It was a lightning punishment from the depths of the chaotic universe. This lightning punishment transcended the boundaries of the boundaries. It struck down fiercely, causing the void to explode continuously. Summer was horrified. What's going on? Why is there a lightning punishment all of a sudden? Frightened by the lightning punishment, the dark blood phoenix retreated quickly. This kind of lightning punishment acted on the divine sense, and it was very terrifying for a blood beast king. Bufang slowly stood up from the ground. The aura around him seemed to be boiling. It was a wonderful feeling to control power. However, no matter how his power boiled, Bufang's aura was still at the demigod level. He had not broken through to the god level. The purple thunderbolt smashed down. Bufang raised his Taotai arm. He threw a punch. There seemed to be a Taotai emerging, facing the void and letting out a bestial roar. The roar shook heaven and earth, causing the void to explode. It devoured the purple thunderbolt. Bufang's aura fluctuated, and there seemed to be a deep look in his eyes. Purple thunderbolts splashed around Bufang, blasting holes in the ground. Summer hurriedly dodged and looked at Bufang in surprise. It was a long time before the thunderbolts disappeared. At the same time, Bufang's aura gradually sank. Bufang raised his head and saw Summer. The surprised look on her face made the corner of Bufang's mouth twitch slightly. In the distance, the dark blood phoenix let out a cry, and the terrible aura of a blood beast king spread. What a big bird, Bufang said. Summer came to her senses, and her expression changed. This is a top blood beast king. A blood beast king? Bufang narrowed his eyes. Gulp. Bufang's stomach rumbled. Rubbing his belly, Bufang raised his head, stared at the huge dark blood phoenix, and grinned. I'm a little hungry, and I don't know if this bird is qualified as an ingredient. I really want to taste the taste of a blood beast king. As soon as Bufang's voice rang out, Summer's hair stood on end. She was crazy. This was a blood beast king, which was equivalent to a high-grade god king. Bufang wanted to eat him? Whether he could survive in front of a blood beast king was a problem, and he actually wanted to eat him. Did he become retarded after eating the heaven god's blood? Summer was a little anxious. Her figure flickered, and she appeared beside Bufang, trying to tear the void and take Bufang away. She had just broken through, so she could give it a try. She just didn't know how fast this dark blood phoenix was. However, she soon despaired, because the dark blood phoenix launched an attack. The black and red feathers shot down like arrows. The surrounding void was sealed. Her law of space couldn't move at all. She raised her hand and slapped it in the air, causing the void to tremble. The law of space formed a barrier in front of them. He blocked the phoenix feather that smashed down. However, after a series of attacks, the phoenix feathers exploded. The law of space shattered. Summer's face turned pale again, and blood oozed out of the corner of her mouth. Boom! One phoenix feather after another pierced toward Bufang and Summer. Summer's pupils reflected the phoenix feathers, which were growing larger and larger. She felt a wave of despair. I'm going to die, let me think. What dish should I cook? Such a fat bird. Let's have a beggar's phoenix. Just when Summer was desperate, at the same time, the sound of Bufang swallowing came from his side. At this moment, he felt an unprecedented hunger. All that was left in his eyes was the huge dark blood phoenix. Boom! Bufang's aura erupted. Over his head, 3 golden wheels of law emerged. The golden wheels rotated, and a mighty aura erupted in an instant. Bufang's aura rose steadily. When it reached its peak, it made Summer's heart palpitate. Summer's pupils constricted as she stared at Bufang. She felt the aura emanating from Bufang that suppressed everything. She felt her hair stand on end. 3 golden wheels of law, what did this mean? It meant that Bufang had just comprehended the 3rd supreme law of the universe. Summer. They had all devoured the heaven god's blood, but why was the difference between them so big? Chapter 1509. 3 Supreme Laws of the Universe, a demigod? Summer stared blankly at Bufang and the 3 golden wheels of law hovering over Bufang's head. She was dumbfounded and did not know what to say. A demigod who could comprehend 1 supreme law of the universe was already considered a rare top genius. However, Bufang had comprehended 3 supreme laws of the universe. This was a monstrous talent that would rise to the heavens. This made the other geniuses feel ashamed. Even the crown prince had only comprehended 2 supreme laws, and he was regarded by the Xiai divine dynasty as a top genius who had the highest chance of breaking through to the heaven god realm. Did that mean that Bufang would definitely become a heaven god? That might be the case. As long as Bufang grew up, the heaven god realm might not even be Bufang's end. No one had ever heard of a heaven god comprehending 3 supreme laws of the universe when he was just a demigod. Bufang had simply broken the rules of the chaotic universe. Rumble! The 3 golden wheels of law spun, stirring up a gust of wind that made Bufang's hair flutter. The phoenix feathers continued to fall, like steel needles stabbing into the ground, creating many potholes on the ground. However, they were pushed away by an invisible force. Rumble! Bufang raised his hand and grabbed a phoenix feather, which was burning with a flame. Bufang watched indifferently, the corners of his mouth twitching slightly. He stuck out his tongue and licked his lip. Then, a silver flame burst out, turned into a raging inferno, and burned the feather. The vermilion robe on Bufang burst into a dazzling light, and a pair of flaming wings emerged behind his back. A sonorous bird cry rang out and filled the void. Bufang soared into the sky and jumped rapidly in midair. The dark blood phoenix was taken aback. She did not expect a mere demigod realm human to be able to withstand her fire feather. He did have some tricks up his sleeve. Rumble! The dark blood phoenix's eyes lit up. What Xia could feel, she could naturally feel as well. The aura of 3 supreme laws of the universe emanating from Bufang made her yearn for it. The heavenly god's blood in Bufang's body had fused with the 3 supreme laws of the universe, which made her blood boil. As long as she devoured this human, her strength would increase by another level. If she devoured the 3 supreme laws of the universe, she might be able to break through to the blood beast emperor realm. It opened its mouth and let out a resonant phoenix cry. The dark blood phoenix's aura surged. Bufang looked indifferent. Step by step, he leaped through the void toward the blood phoenix. Xia Chen recovered from his shock and was immediately shocked. No, even if Bufang had comprehended 3 supreme laws of the universe, he was only a demigod. How could he fight against a high-grade god king? The gap was too big. That was courting death. No, he was gifting his innate gift. Xia's face was pale as she clutched her chest. Blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth. She wanted to save Bufang, but she was powerless. Boom! Bufang soared into the air and appeared in front of the dark blood phoenix. His indifferent gaze collided with the blood phoenix's. Beggar's phoenix, I'm calling you. Do you dare to answer? Bufang said. The blood phoenix immediately roared and shot out a thin, sharp thread from its mouth, which tore through the void like an arrow. The distance between the two was too close. Therefore, as soon as the thread appeared, it directly hit Bufang's face. Bufang's body tumbled. He raised his hand and suddenly clamped down with 2 fingers, catching the thread. It was a slender phoenix bone, which was the color of glass. It was a rather precious item. Boom! Bright light surged on his Taotai arm. That was the power of the heavenly god's bone. With a kacha sound, the phoenix bone was directly crushed into pieces. With 3 golden wheels of the supreme laws of the universe above his head, Bufang's aura rose steadily. He moved and landed on the back of the blood phoenix. He grabbed the blood phoenix's slender neck. The first step of the beggar's phoenix is to remove its feathers, Bufang said lightly. Streams of light seemed to burst out of his Taotai arm. He slapped it. With a ripping sound, he grabbed a large handful of phoenix feathers. The sky was filled with feathers in the distance. Some blood beast kings widened their eyes, feeling incredulous. The dark blood phoenix was actually being suppressed by a human? The blood phoenix was considered very strong among the blood beast kings. Summer was also dumbfounded. Instead of being killed instantly, Bufang began to pluck the blood phoenix's feathers. This was a blood phoenix, and its feathers were very precious and rare materials. Each of them was worth thousands of taels of gold. Summer's heart skipped a beat. She gently flapped her slender hand in the air. She guided the falling phoenix feathers to fly toward her. She put them all into her spatial bag. I can't waste such good things. The robes of the Empress of the Divine Dynasty were all made of phoenix feathers, and each of them was extremely precious. The dark blood phoenix was furious. Her gem-like eyes glowed with a fierce light. This damned human! This human, whom she regarded as food! How dare he pluck the noble phoenix's feathers? This is unforgivable! Her long neck bent. Her cries pierced through the sky. The dark blood phoenix flew up into the sky in an instant. Then, she rushed into the sky. A strong gust of wind blew over in an instant. Bufang's hair fluttered in the wind. At this moment, everyone seemed to be watching the battle. The god kings who had originally retreated began to pay attention to the battle again. They didn't expect that Bufang, who was supposed to be dead, was still holding on. This was incredible. What was even more incredible was that Bufang's cultivation base was only a demigod, but he could fight a high-grade god king. The gap between their cultivation bases was simply too great. The Crown Prince, for example, was a talented genius who could fight low-grade god kings or mid-grade god kings with the strength of a demigod. This was already his limit. However, this demigod genius in front of him was even more outrageous. He could actually fight a top blood beast king. Rumble. The Blood Phoenix's aura grew more and more terrifying. The Blood Phoenix was infuriated by the loss of its feathers. Her aura vibrated as she flapped her wings and sent Bufang flying. Bufang's body tumbled in the air, and his stomach growled with hunger. He stepped on the void, moving forward step by step. The law of space swirled, and the law of transmigration spread. The last golden wheel cast a beam of light. The light enveloped Bufang's fist. Bufang felt as if thousands of forces were gathering in his Taotai arm. The Taotia's soul in the arm could not bear this kind of power and was about to explode. Boom! The void seemed to be on the verge of exploding. An aura of destruction spread, blotting out the sky. The law of destruction. This time, Bufang comprehended the law of destruction, which was a relatively common supreme law of the universe. However, Bufang had comprehended two supreme laws, and he was able to comprehend another one, which was heaven-defying. The law of destruction, the law of transmigration, the law of space. The three laws turned into three streams of gray air, drilling into Bufang's Taotai arm. Bufang felt as if his whole arm was about to explode. Bufang furrowed his brows. His divine sense surged. The true form of his divine sense in his spirit sea opened its eyes. His consciousness guided the power of the three laws through his Taotai arm and into Bufang's thumb. There, Bufang's finger bones shone with a dazzling radiance. That was where the Heaven God's bone was. The Heaven God's bone could bear the power of the three laws. Bufang felt as if a supreme power was about to burst out. He hovered in the air. Then, he pressed his thumb toward the huge dark blood phoenix. The blood phoenix's gem-like eyes focused. The law of praise. The law of Taotai finger. Bufang said. As soon as he finished speaking, the golden wheel of law erupted with a supreme aura. The aura spread for tens of thousands of miles, attracting the attention of countless experts. Rumble. The dark blood phoenix flapped its wings. The black flame turned into a wheel and wrapped around its body. This was the supreme aura of a high-grade god king. After wrapping around it, it shot toward Bufang's finger. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the finger collided with the wheel of fire. Rumble. Countless terrible rumbles swept out. On the ground, Summer's injuries worsened. She activated a protective shield of the law of space to block the energy impact. The surrounding blood beast kings were horrified. Some of the god kings watching sucked in their breath. Bam! A figure flew backward out of the void and smashed hard to the ground. Countless trees turned to ashes at this moment. A huge crater was blasted out of the ground, in which countless energies floated. The finger in the void slowly dissipated. On the ground, the blood phoenix's head was smashed. That thumb had crushed the blood phoenix's head? Summer froze, somewhat surprised. The surrounding god kings were also in disbelief. This was the dark blood phoenix, one of the top 10 blood beast kings in the ancient heaven god's relic. In the entire ancient relic, there were no more than 5 god kings who could defeat this blood phoenix. In the end, a demigod actually pressed the blood phoenix to the ground and beat it? However, even if the blood beast king's head was smashed, it might not necessarily die. It was too early to say that he had killed the blood phoenix. It could only be said that Bufang had completely enraged the blood phoenix. Rumble. Sure enough, flames seemed to spurt out of the deep crater on the ground. The blood phoenix soared into the sky and was reborn. Its head recovered in an instant, and its sharp gem-like eyes seemed to be bursting with light. Bufang stepped in the void. The intense hunger in his stomach made him feel irritated and furious. The law of destruction seemed to be boiling. Rumble! The Taotai arm became more and more terrifying. Bufang flew across the sky, his aura fluctuating. The black turtle constellation walk appeared in his hand. One walk after another flew toward the blood phoenix. This scene shocked everyone. Bam! The black turtle constellation walk turned into a huge black walk that blotted out the sky. The black walk smashed into the ground, cracking it and sending a large amount of soil into the sky. Bufang flipped his hand over. He swung it hard. It was as if a river had crossed the sky, sweeping the soil and turning it into a mound. He put away the black turtle constellation walk. Bufang's hand shook. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. A dragon roar resounded through the sky. Bufang focused his eyes. The law of space erupted. His figure kept flashing in the sky. The knife slashed down. The blood phoenix's tail feathers disappeared in an instant. The 3 golden wheels of law crushed down and condensed into the thumb, which pressed down on the blood phoenix's head and pressed it to the ground. No matter how it struggled, feathers were pulled out one by one. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife soared into the sky and slashed down. With a puff, a huge gash appeared on the phoenix's neck. Fresh blood gushed out like a river, surging endlessly. Summer was dumbfounded. Watching Bufang's actions from a distance, she was dumbfounded. Plucking feathers, letting out blood, disemboweling, and mixing mud. He's really going to treat the blood phoenix as an ingredient. Where does this guy get his confidence from? This was a top-grade blood beast king, and he actually wanted to eat it. Lunatic. A complete lunatic. Whether it was Summer or the surrounding god kings, they all thought that Bufang was crazy. No one thought that Bufang could succeed. The blood phoenix would eventually let Bufang understand what a real top blood beast king was. Some high-grade god kings released their auras. They were ready to save Bufang at any time. After all, he was a genius who had comprehended 3 supreme laws of the universe. There was no one in the past and no one in the future. Such a genius must not die under the claws of the blood phoenix. Huh? Wait a minute. Many god kings froze. In the distance, Bufang's actions stunned them. The soil mixed with water turned into soft mud. Bufang slapped the mud with the wok, and one soft mud after another fell from the sky. The blood phoenix was smashed to the ground with a loud crash. Bam! 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 The huge blood phoenix was wrapped into a mud ball. At this moment, everyone was shocked. The corner of Summer's mouth twitched violently. F***ck. This guy is for real? He really wants to kill the blood phoenix? Chapter 15:10. Rumble. The miserable cry of the phoenix resounded through the sky, becoming extremely shrill in the dark night. The black flame was completely extinguished by the soaked soil. The experts in the surroundings all revealed shocked expressions. They were all the top experts in the divine dynasty, and each of them was a mighty figure. There were no weaklings here, and even the weakest among them was an outstanding mid-grade god king who could fight against high-grade god kings. However, even mid-grade god kings who could fight high-grade god kings never thought that such a monster existed in this world. With the strength of a demigod, he had suppressed a top blood beast king. Moreover, judging from his movements, it seemed that he wanted to kill the dark blood phoenix. The phoenix was beautiful. Even though she was only a blood phoenix, she was extremely beautiful. Her feathers were neatly combed and blood-red, making her look extremely beautiful. But now, she was like a chicken whose feathers had been plucked, looking extremely miserable. The mud and water slapped on her body, mixing her into a mud chicken. Blood gushed out of her wounds. The blood phoenix's aura began to weaken, getting weaker and weaker. This was the first time she felt fear. As one of the top experts in the ruins, this time, she felt fear, she felt that she might die. The blood phoenix opened her mouth and was about to spit out flames that would burn everything. The black flame caused the soil around her to evaporate. In midair, Bufang rubbed his stomach with one hand and slapped the void with the other, throwing soil at the blood phoenix. Gulp! Bufang's stomach growled unceasingly, and he also felt somewhat uncomfortable. He had never felt so hungry before. As a chef, he had to keep himself full all the time. As a chef, it was shameful to let himself go hungry. But this time, Bufang was so hungry that he could not control himself. Why was he so hungry? Bufang was puzzled. Was it because he had comprehended the supreme law of the universe? But that shouldn't be the case. Bufang had devoured the fruit of law and comprehended the supreme law of the universe, but he had never felt so hungry. Could it be because of the fusion of the heavenly god's blood and the heavenly god's bone? After all, his body was only at the level of a demigod. After fusing with the heavenly god's bone and heavenly god's blood, the consumption of his physical body's power was tremendous. This was probably the main reason for his hunger. Since he was hungry, he would eat. In Bufang's eyes, this blood phoenix seemed to have become a steaming beggar's phoenix. Still want to struggle? Bufang stuck out his tongue and licked his lip. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a gentle smile. Looking at the black flames that were constantly spewing out of the phoenix's mouth, Yi Zichen felt a chill run down his spine. Phoenixes could undergo nirvana and be reborn. Perhaps this blood phoenix was trying to show off. But, in front of a chef, no matter how much you show off, you can't change the fact that you're an ingredient. Bufang raised his hand. A silver flame suddenly appeared in his palm. The silver flame emitted a scorching heat. The space above it seemed to be distorted, and the power of laws circulated and surged on it, as if it was about to emit terrifying fluctuations. Boom! Bufang's hand shook. The silver flame turned into a small sparrow. The silver sparrow flapped its wings and flew towards the blood phoenix below. The blood phoenix's gem-like eyes shrank. She felt the flames on her body suddenly constrict. She wanted to rise from the ashes, but the flames shrank back into her body. What's going on? The blood phoenix was a little frightened and dumbfounded. A moment later, she saw a silver sparrow flapping its wings. The sparrow was flying very slowly. Swaying, it landed on the blood phoenix's head. Then, boom! The blood phoenix let out a shrill cry of misery. Her entire body was shrouded in the silver flame. The symbols of law kept emerging and moving in the world. In the sky, Bufang's eyes brightened. Now was the time. Her body fell to the ground like a cannonball. Bufang's palm slammed hard, sending mud up into the sky. Boom! The mud in Bufang's hand turned into a huge ball of mud, wrapping the blood phoenix's body. The water in the ball evaporated in an instant. There was even a flicker of fiery red in it. It was being roasted. At first, the blood phoenix struggled for a while. But as time went by, her struggle became weaker and weaker. Summer covered her mouth in disbelief. All that was left in her was fear. What the F***ck just happened? Looking at the blood phoenix wrapped in the ball of mud, she felt a little confused. That was a top-grade blood beast king. The high-grade god kings in the distance also felt strange. They didn't know what to say. The blood phoenix was actually killed by someone. The mighty blood phoenix, a top existence among blood beast kings, who was invincible in the relic and frightened countless god kings, was actually killed by someone. There was a loud bang. The sky suddenly exploded. The surrounding blood beast kings shot out one after another. They wanted to save the blood phoenix. The death of a top blood beast king had a huge impact on the situation in the relic. Naturally, they couldn't just watch the dark blood phoenix be cooked by someone. Bufang looked up, stuck out his tongue, and licked his lip. So many ingredients, Bufang murmured as he controlled the fire. A deafening, thunderous sound came from his abdomen. Hunger drove him crazy. In his eyes, the blood beast kings flying down from the sky were like delicacies. For example, flapping roast ducks, running roast pigs, steaming tiger stew, and so on, ha ha. It's rare for such a genius to be born in our divine dynasty. Get out of here, you beasts! Chuckles resounded one after another. The meat of the blood phoenix. I really want to have a taste of it. Ah! In the sky the void was torn apart. Streams of terrifying aura filled the sky. One high-grade god king after another stepped out of the void. These god kings all looked majestic. Some held halberds, some held spears, some held swords, and some held knives. The god kings stepped out of the void, and their auras that could shake heaven and earth stood in front of these savage beasts. Boom! A battle broke out in an instant. These blood beast kings and the god kings fought fiercely. The power of laws collided with each other, and divine power and beast blood were boiling. Because they had the advantage in numbers, and because the blood beast kings had been killed by the blood phoenix, their morale was somewhat low. Therefore, the final winner of this battle was the human god kings. The blood beast kings fled one after another. For them, the loss of a top blood beast king was simply disastrous news. Boom! The void was constantly torn apart, and the blood beast kings fled. The canopy of the sky was connected into one. Only the godly kings were left standing in the sky, revealing expressions of joy. This battle could be considered the most exhilarating battle that the human godly kings had ever fought so far. The blood beast kings actually fled in terror. Many god kings turned their heads and stared at Bufang down below with strange eyes. There, Bufang stood in front of a huge mud ball. The mud ball seemed to have turned into a mountain, with silver flames surging in it. Bufang controlled the divine flame and kept burning it. One layer inside and the other outside. Under the roasting of the two layers of flames, it would definitely become a top delicacy. Of course, the meat quality of a blood beast king was very good. Rumble! Black clouds once again appeared in the sky. This time, it was not the purple lightning tribulation. Because it was a normal dish lightning tribulation, it appeared blue. For Bufang, it was very easy to resist this kind of lightning tribulation. Boom! Boom! After a series of wild explosions from the lightning, Bufang stared at the huge mud ball with blazing eyes. The god kings all landed and gathered curiously around Bufang. Little brother, did you really cook the blood phoenix? A god king asked, swallowing subconsciously, glancing at Bufang. Bufang didn't answer him. Summer walked over. I can't believe he's able to cook a blood beast king. What level has Bufang's cooking skills reached? Could he be a heaven divine chef like Mu Hongzi? If that's the case, it's a little scary. Can locking the blood phoenix in a mud ball really make a delicacy? This cooking method is so strange, it should be edible. Otherwise, wouldn't it be a waste of such a top ingredient? The surrounding god kings all began to mutter. They were not top god kings, but they happened to be in this world, so they rushed over. They didn't expect to catch such a feast. They saw the scene of a heaven-defying genius cooking a blood beast king. Is it done? Xia Xia looked at the huge mud ball and couldn't help but feel a little curious and tempted as she asked Bufang. Bufang glanced at her and twitched the corner of his mouth. It's done. Buzz, as soon as Bufang's voice rang out, he soared into the sky. He held the black turtle constellation wok in his hand. With one step, he soared up into the air and came over the huge mud ball. Then, he grabbed the wok with both hands and smashed it at the mud ball. Dong! A crisp sound rang out. In the next moment, the sturdy mud ball was suddenly covered with dense cracks. Crack! Crack! A crack spread out from the center of the mud ball, covering the entire mud ball. Bufang stood over the mud ball. He bent his index and middle fingers slightly and gently tapped the mud ball. Crack! The mud ball instantly shattered, and a piece of it fell off. Boom! Silver flames burst out of it, turned into a silver phoenix, and soared into the sky, hovering around Bufang. Finally, it turned into a silver thread of fire and entered Bufang's palm. Buzz, there seemed to be a faint, gentle sound. A thick and majestic meaty aroma spread out from the mud ball. It stirred people's hearts and made their mouths full of saliva. This aroma was simply invincible. The God Kings, Summer, and Bufang all took deep breaths, intoxicated by the aroma, unable to extricate themselves. This was the charm of food. This was the charm of top-grade delicacies. It had been a long time since the God Kings in this relic had smelled such an aroma. For a moment, they were extremely hungry. Bufang felt so hungry that he almost convulsed. This aroma was too tantalizing. His hand shook. The dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. He slashed it down. There was a cracking sound. The mud ball was split in two. Bufang grabbed the crack and separated it. A long whistle rang out. The mud ball exploded instantly. Golden light shot out from the mud ball and soared into the sky. It was extremely dazzling and dazzling. Along with the aroma, the God Kings and Summer couldn't help but exclaim. A dish cooked by a top-grade blood beast king, a blood phoenix. How delicious would it be? Everyone was looking forward to it. Boom! The mud ball's shell fell to the ground, cracking and splashing. However, no one's eyes were attracted by this scene. Instead, they were all staring ahead. There, a huge blood phoenix, as big as a mountain, hovered there. Without its feathers, its flesh had turned golden, and there were even drops of oil flowing on it. It was steaming hot, and a rich aroma filled the air. The golden phoenix was so beautiful that it made people drool. Bufang couldn't stand it anymore. He took a step forward. He reached out, grabbed the blood phoenix's leg, and suddenly pulled. Oil splashed, and the flesh was separated. Holding the huge beggar's phoenix leg, Bufang didn't hesitate to open his mouth and bite it. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.